For big business.
RSK, let it play,
Yeah.
boy.
When I tell them I'm an Israelite, it's big business, not miniature. Serving same thing as minister. Kill the flesh, how to finish them. These commandments, they'll sustain you. I'm surrounded by these angels. I ain't worried, I'm protected from seen and unseen dangers. When I tell them I'm an Israelite, it's big business, not miniature. Serving same thing as minister. Kill the flesh, how to finish them. These commandments, they'll sustain you. I'm surrounded by these angels. I ain't worried, I'm protected from seen and unseen dangers. I wake up and say me a prayer, brush my teeth, babe, then I throw on some threads. Wash my face, grab a cup, pour me some yum, put on my backpack, then I'm off to the bread. I eat these devils for breakfast, gotta be careful. Whole lot of blood being shed in the streets. World is so wicked, I weep for the living, I drop a free church for the dead. All my white friends in my pocket, or either they loading onto this black card that I swipe. Say every time that I drop it, the verses be hitting more harder than problems of life. Rich, I collected 2 pennies from every person that willingly gave me advice. Being afraid can't exist in my spirit, I'm fearing no man but the Father in Christ. I put in work with the brothers, we stood on them corners from 10 to like 9 to some night, teaching our people the gospel, equipped with a camera, some posters, some speakers and mic. Every time that I see mama, she telling me, son, you gotta walk in the light. Christ, the bread of heaven, keep feeding my spirit, and I wanna load, not a slide. When I tell them I'm an Israelite, it's big business, not miniature. Serving same thing as minister. Kill the flesh, how to finish them. These commandments, they'll sustain you. I'm surrounded by these angels. I ain't worried, I'm protected from seen and unseen dangers. When I tell them I'm an Israelite, it's big business, not miniature. Serving same thing as minister. Kill the flesh, how to finish them. These commandments, they'll sustain you. I'm surrounded by these angels. I ain't worried, I'm protected from seen and unseen dangers.
When I tell ya I'm an Israelite, tribe of Judah, don't you take it personal. Bleed the blood on these demons, we purging them. Don't entertain Jezebels, we be curving them. Ayy, I got a ribbon, she virtuous. In person, this blue life ain't virtual. I can't forget when I heard the truth. I got cut with that word, it got surgical. Conviction can lead to repentance. I pray these verses encourage you. We repenting, now we on the vertical. Judah rising, see Isaiah 32. Big business, nothing minuscule. I picked up that pen back in middle school. Guard your light and take heed who you listen to. Watch your mouth and your ears and your vision too. Hashatan and Shalkani won't finish you. In Mortal Kombat, this war is not physical. Gird your loins up and follow the general. Messiah is coming, that's scriptural. You gotta starve your flesh. The real war ain't even started yet. This look like a setup for a second exodus. I'm trying to be where the water at. Let's get it.
When I tell them I'm an Israelite, it's big business, not miniature. Serving same thing as minister. Kill the flesh, how to finish them. These commandments, they'll sustain you. I'm surrounded by these angels. I ain't worried, I'm protected from seen and unseen dangers. When I tell them I'm an Israelite, it's big business, not miniature. Serving same thing as minister. Kill the flesh, how to finish them. These commandments, they'll sustain you. I'm surrounded by these angels. I ain't worried, I'm protected from seen and unseen dangers.
Yo, shalom, shalom. We're back with another classic. I know you guys were fiending for some more of our brother Ivri of Israel, aka Hebrew of Israel, the young savant, the young phenom of the Israelite community. The brother dropped 2 bombshells on you guys last week, and the feedback was bananas. You guys loved his information. Back-to-back thorough breakdowns of scientific articles and findings, and tying back the haplogroup E to the Proto-Semitic and original Semitic people, the Semites. Brother did an excellent job and broke that down. So I'm not going to hold you guys up all night. You guys know who he is. This guy has done some fantastic work on the channel already, and he's going to continue to do so. So this is part 3, and we're going to look to upload part 4 tomorrow. So be on the lookout for that. With no further ado, my brother Ivri of Israel.
Shalom, everyone. Thank you for having me back on the show.
I can't wait to bring out this information. And so let's get started here. So just in case anybody is new to me, because I know he's always, Genesis 49ers is always getting new subscribers. So I'm going to just lay out again my goal and who I am and things of that nature. All right, I'm going to wait and see if it's on the screen. It's a little bit of a delay when it comes to StreamYard and YouTube. So is it there?
Yes, it's up on the screen.
Okay. So the Hebrew of Israel, this is my preface, my introduction, my outline. So my goal is to search for the descendants of the ancient Hebrews of Israel. In order to do this, we have to reach into the past and learn about the origins of Semites, Israel, and the surrounding nations. I do this because I love history and understanding the ancient world. I have a minor in history in college, and therefore I'm naturally going to be involved in this subject outside of the university. With that being said, however, we need to, I want people to not, hate other ethnic groups or religious groups. Love thy neighbor as yourself. I believe in these principles. I encourage people who read and watch my content to do the same. With that being said, who is Israel? This topic has grown a lot. We hear Europeans, Filipinos, Native Americans, Bantu people, etc., basically claim this particular lineage. And so what we need to do is break down from the beginning and understand who is telling the truth, because we don't want to lie. We don't want to sin, because lying is a sin. So where can you find me? You can find me on YouTube, BitChute, Dailymotion, DTube, Rumble Room, Rumble, iConnectFX, DLive, Brand New Tube, also on Twitch. And where can you find me when it comes to social media platforms? This is my Clubhouse, my personal Clubhouse account, and this is my Clubhouse room. This is my Facebook, my Facebook profile. This is my Facebook page, and another Facebook page. This is my Instagram. And where can you find me on web pages? And so this is my Medium, and this is my Quora. And where can you find me on internet forums? You can find me on Reddit, Hebrew Sphere, Mastodon, Men's Black Zone. And if you want to support me, I have a Patreon, a PayPal, and a GoFundMe. Anyways, so to conclude, my goal is to search for the descendants of the ancient Hebrews of Israel. In order to do this, we need to reach into the past and learn about the origins of Semites and the surrounding nations. So let's begin. All right. So this is technically episode 3, but it's labeled episode 2 because this would have been if I was able to get the other presentation done in one go. But anyways, Abraham to Joseph, episode 3. Last time we covered the academic origins for Afro-Asiatic and Semites. This was important in understanding the origins of the ancestors of the Israelites, because they are an Afro-Asiatic people. So if you look at the genealogy mentioned in Genesis 10 and 11, to the Israelites' own book, the Hebrew book, they say they are Semitic. So this is the population that we need to focus on and look at. And linguistically, of course, they are Semitic. And Semitic is part of Afro-Asiatic. All of this is very important. By understanding that the Israelites are a Afro-Asiatic Semitic people, and by understanding the origins of Afro-Asiatic/Semitic, we begin to trace the lineage of these people using Y-DNA haplogroups. By the way, a Y-DNA haplogroup is basically a paternal haplogroup that's passed down from father to son, father to son, father to son, an unbroken line. And so with that being said, we look at the origins of Afroasiatic through academia. Therefore, we were looking into an old Earth model for the most part for my last two presentations. How old is the Earth? There are two different views for the age of the Earth in creationism. It's either old or young, but what does this mean? Let's explain the old Earth theory. So, the old Earth model. Old Earth creationism is a form of creationism which includes day-age creationism, gap creationism, and progressive creationism. Broadly speaking, OEC, which is Old Earth creationism, occupies a middle ground between young Earth creationism and theistic evolution. So the gap theory is a form of old Earth creationism that posits that the 6 Yom creation period, as described in the book of Genesis, involved 6 literal 24-hour days, light being day and dark night, as God specified, but that there was a gap in time between two distinct creations in the first and second verses of Genesis, which the theory states explains by scientific observation, including the age of the earth. So progressive creationism is the religious belief that God created new forms of life gradually over a period of hundreds or of millions of years. As a form of old earth creationism, it accepts mainstream geological and cosmological estimates for the age of the earth. Some tenets of biology, such as microevolution, as well as archaeology, to make its case. In this view, creation occurred in rapid bursts in which all kinds of plants and animals appear in stages lasting millions of years. The bursts are followed by periods of stasis or equilibrium to accommodate new arrivals. These bursts represent instances of God creating new types of organisms by divine intervention. As viewed from the archaeological record, progressive creationism holds that species do not gradually appear by the steady transformation of its ancestors, but appear all at once and fully formed. Day-age creationism, a type of old earth creationism, is a metaphorical interpretation of creation accounts in Genesis. It holds that the 6 days referred to in the Genesis account of creation are not ordinary 24 hours, but are much longer periods, from thousands to billions of years. The Genesis account is then reconciled with the age of the earth. Proponents of the day-age theory can be found among both theistic evolutionists who accept the scientific census of evolution and progressive creationists who reject it. The theories are said to be built on the understanding that the Hebrew word yom is also used to refer to a period of time with a beginning and an end, and not necessarily that of a 24-hour day. Theistic evolution are views that regard religious teachings that God as capable with modern scientific understanding about biological evolution. Theistic evolution is not in itself a scientific theory, but a range of views about how the science of general evolution relates to religious beliefs, in contrast to special creation views. Theistic evolutionists accept a scientific consensus on the age of the earth and the universe, the Big Bang, the origin of the solar system, the origin of life and evolution. So, old earth model. What are the Afroasiatic origins of Israel if the old earth model is true? Well, you can say that the origins of Afroasiatic was in the Horn of Africa, if you partake in this particular view, which we covered in previous presentations. You can say the origins of Afroasiatic is in Yemen. You can say the origins of Afroasiatic is in the Arabian Peninsula. And you can say that the Eastern Sahara / Nile Valley, Red Sea, is another place for the origins of Afroasiatic. And by the way, y'all can pause this and read what I have on these images. Or you can say that the Levant Natufians are the origins of Afroasiatic. So the Horn of Africa, Yemen, Arabian Peninsula, Eastern Sahara, Nile Valley, Red Sea, North Africa, Sahara, Sahel, or the Levant Natufians. These are the general homelands for the origins of Afroasiatic people, including Semites. Basically, the origins of the Afroasiatic and the origins of haplogroup E overlap. As you can see, when most people say E originated in the Horn of Africa, Yemen, Arabia, the Levant, North Africa, Eastern Sahara, it's the same place as Afroasiatic origins. It basically overlaps all locations. Generally, it's believed that the origins of Afroasiatic was either the Horn of Africa, Eastern Sahara, North Africa, the Levant, or Natufians. I can let Yeshub take on this one. So I get a sip of water.
All right. It says a commonly proposed homeland is Northeast Africa, particularly in or near Ethiopia, in part due to the presence of many branches of the family in and near the region and in Africa. According to other words for fauna and flora and evidence of linguistic contact with language families known to have been spoke in Eurasia, suggests that its home was in Middle East, probably the Levant. Some geneticists and archaeologists have argued for a back migration of Proto-Afroasiatic speakers from Western Asia to Africa as early as the 10th millennium BC. It has been suggested that the Natufian culture might have spoken a Proto-Afro-Asian language just prior to the disintegration into sublanguages. The hypothesis is supported by the Afroasiatic terms of for early livestock and crops in Anatolia and Iran, but would then imply that branches other than Semitic develop outside of the proposed homeland. According to linguist Vaclav Blazik, the possibility of a language similar to Cushitic being formally spoken originally in the south of Arabia also speaks for a Middle Eastern origin. But some other proposals posits Northern Africa or the Horn of Africa as possible places of origin.
And as y'all can see, there is a map that shows basically the three best theories for the origin of Afroasiatic: Horn of Africa, Eastern Sahara, Nile Valley, or the Levant. So, using the biblical interpretation of the Old Earth model, you could say that the origins of Israel's Afroasiatic Semitic ancestors is any of these locations: the Horn of Africa, Yemen, Arabian Peninsula, Eastern Sahara, Nile Valley, Red Sea, North Africa, which includes the Sahara and the Sahel, or Levant Natufians. You can choose whichever location which best suits for you. With that being said, what about a young Earth? So, young Earth model. So if you don't know what young Earth is, young Earth creationism is a form of creationism which holds as a central tenet that the Earth and its life forms were created in their present forms by supernatural acts of a deity between approximately 6,000 and 100,000 years ago. Basically, it's the biblical interpretation that the Most High created the earth in 6 literal days and rested on the seventh. Everything about Genesis creation story is taken literal. There was paradise in the garden, but Adam and Eve sinned, and death was brought into the world when they ate from the forbidden fruit. Every human descends from Adam and Eve, but specifically Noah and his 3 sons, Shem, Ham, and Japheth. The flood was global and destroyed the world. Only Noah's family survived. The old ages of people are literal. Example, Adam did live to be 900 years old. And basically that the earth is about 6,000 years old. That's basically the young earth model. So basically, in the beginning, God created, so on and so forth. Like day 1, he separated the light from the dark. Day 2, separated the waters above from the waters below. Day 3, he gathered the sea together and caused the land to appear and cause seed-bearing vegetation to appear. Day 4, he made the sun and the moon to be signs for sacred times. Day 5, he created the birds of the air and the fish of the sea. Day 6, he created the land creatures, and humans were made. On day 7, God rested on the 7th. He blessed this day, and he made it to be sanctified. That's how you get the Sabbath and all. So this is like all a literal interpretation. And the biblical view, Adam and Eve being the father of mankind, which is mentioned in 1 Corinthians chapter 15, verse 24, and Genesis chapter 3, verse 20. And then they had sons and daughters, which is mentioned in Genesis chapter 5, verse 4. And then eventually we get to Noah and his sons, Genesis chapter 9, 17 through 19. And then you get the Tower of Babel event, which is mentioned in Genesis 11, chapter 11, verse 8 through 6, and Acts chapter 17, verse 26. And as I said before, the ages of the people is literal. So Adam would have literally lived to be about 930 years old and things of that nature. And then you have the flood event, which shortened men's lives all the way to what we have today. And of course, biblical timeline of the earth being about 6,000 to 10,000 years old. So I personally believe in a young earth, but like I said, I do dabble in both old earth and young earth because I want to know people's perspectives and who ancient Israel ancestors will be if the earth does turn out to be old. So I try to understand both concepts. I personally more gravitate to a young earth, but I do understand the old earth, obviously, as I did 2 presentations. That was mostly from an old earth perspective. So again, this is giving my young earth perspective of who Israel's ancient ancestors would be. But here are the reasons why I believe in a young earth. And you can check these videos out. The YouTube channel is called White Rabbit. The video is the Genesis Theory, part 1 and 2. You can check out Truth in Genesis, Kent Hovind's creation seminars, 1 through 7 or 1 through 8. You can check out Aaron Carlson. He was a former atheist who became Christian when he looked at the idea of the earth possibly being young. You can also check out Genesis Apologetics, young earth versus old earth. What does the Bible say? Did God really create in 6 days? And also, you just check out the Genesis Apologetics in general. I'll just flip through these slides and y'all can pause it when you get a chance and write down the videos. Check out these videos as to see why I personally believe in what I believe. All right, so this is a little bit of homework for you guys, and it's fun homework. These videos are more or so the reason why I believe in a young earth. Consider these videos as a starter pack for your journey. Now, you might be wondering or saying to yourself, when it comes to the origins of Afro-Asiatic and Semites, I provided evidence for the old earth model, but what about the young earth? I know there's some Hebrews and Christians that believe in a young earth. So that's what this presentation is about. Our focus is on the young earth model and how to harmonize scriptures with the academic origins of Afro-Asiatic and Proto-Semitic. First, we had to understand academically the origin locations for Afro-Asiatic, where it first emerged from. So we can have an idea of what we're looking for, the type of phenotype of these people, what would they have, as well as the genotype. Now we can look at the scriptures and harmonize everything we learned. Also, many people believe in the old earth model, so I want to provide evidence for them when it comes to the origins of Afro-Asiatic and Semites. They can choose whichever location, like I said before, the Horn of Africa, Yemen, Arabia, Nile Valley, North Africa, Levant. Therefore, at the end of the day, old earth or young earth, it depends on your perspective. So let's begin. I take the scriptures literally when it says the Most High created the earth in 6 days and rested on the seventh, as I showed you before. Day 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. So Eden, Genesis chapter 2, verse 8 through 14. I believe the Garden of Eden was a real location. So in Genesis chapter 2, verse 8 through 14 says, the Lord God planted a garden eastward in Eden, and there he put the man whom he had formed. Now a river went out of Eden. Now a river went out of Eden to water the garden, and from there it parted and became 4 rivers. The name of the first is Pishon. It is the one which stretches the whole of Havilah, which there is gold, and the gold of that land is good. Bdellium and onyx stone are there. The name of the second river is Gihon. It is the one which goes around the whole land of Cush. The name of the third river is Hedekel. It is the one which goes towards the east of Assyria. The fourth river is the Euphrates. Now, here is my belief of the world before the flood. I believe it was basically Pangea. All the continents were together. And the rivers, Pishon, Gihon, Hiddekel, and Euphrates all flowed into Israel. I believe that Israel was where the Garden of Eden was. The Pishon River is one of the Nile Valley rivers. The Gihon would have been the Red Sea, but it was more together in the past. And of course, Tigris and Euphrates rivers is still where it would be. Here's a better map. Eden, Genesis chapter 2, verse 8 through 14. We're still in that. It says, I believe the Garden of Eden was in present-day Israel, as I said. Here's actually a closer map. So like mentions the city of Enoch. I believe that would have been in like Babylon. And here's like a closer image of the rivers coming together, forming one. Here's a better image. The land of Nod, would have been like Iraq, modern day Iraq. The way I see it is that the land of Eden itself is Africa, but the garden, which is east of Eden, is in Israel. Like, here's a good example. Like, the land of Eden is Africa, but the garden is actually in Israel. Here's another physical representation. Mount Zion. Because Israel has always been, I believe, always been from the beginning of time to the end of time, will always be a special place to the Most High. I guess because it's really like the center of the earth or something like that. I assume that's why he likes it, but it's always a special place. So, Adam was created from the dust of the ground. This is in Genesis chapter 2, verse 4 through 7. But a mist went up from the ground, from the earth, and watered the whole face of the ground. And the Lord formed man of the dust of the ground and breathed into his nostrils the breath of life, and the man became a living being. According to biblical scholars, they seem to believe Adam would have been brown in complexion, not black skinned or white skinned, but a middle tone, which is brown. So here's a video that will go into that.
I hear this one a lot. How can there be so many races in the world if we are all the
All right, so that's not working. Yeshub, can you type in what did Adam look like? Answers in Genesis.
Yes, I'm familiar with that video, and you're gonna start a fire in the conscious community if you watch this video. What does Adam look like? Okay, Adam look like. Answers in Genesis. Excuse me. What's the title again? What would Adam look like, or what was at?
What would Adam look like? Answers in Genesis, and you can probably share the screen so I could kind of see what it looks like, what the thumbnail would be.
Confirming, evolving. How about this? Let me search on their actual YouTube page, and that may be better. What would
And also, it'll also be about a 3-minute video. It'll be really short.
Yeah, I haven't. I know the video you're talking about, but I can't pinpoint it. What would Adam look like?
Maybe I could look it
Is
up
that
as well.
Yes, you can. You actually can. So if you just share a YouTube tab, you can bring it up on your end. Yeah. So yeah, man, great presentation so far. Brothers going into Adam and breaking down the different models in biblical theology as it relates to the chronology of the early peoples and creations. The brother said, try entering National Geographic Adam.
All right, here it is.
Got it?
Yes. So I'll share my screen.
Yeah.
Let me see. Let me hide that. Stop sharing screen.
You can actually just share that tab with the YouTube on.
Yeah. Can you see it?
Yep, there it is.
All right, let's get this ad. What was that?
Oh, that's the name of the video. Check this out, The Origin of Races. Your volume's muted. Your YouTube volume's muted.
I hear this one a lot. How can there be so many races in the world if we are all descendants of Adam and Eve? Well, check this out. First off, let's talk about the word race. Sometimes when people use the word, they mean supposed races of people who have evolved at different times, rates, and in different locations. That's not true. Of course, the word race is also a term we use to distinguish between groups with different physical traits, namely skin color. But are there really different races? Take a gander at Acts 17:26, where it is written that God, from one man, made every nation of men. It's clear then that the Bible teaches that there is one race, the human race. The Bible is also clear that all people on the earth are descendants of Adam and Eve who were created by God. Check Genesis 1:26 through 28. Easy enough. God created two people in his image, male and female, and told them to increase in number. So Adam and Eve are mom and dad of the human race. Then their children had children, and those children had children, and so on and so forth for many generations until, according to Genesis 6:9, the world's population was reduced to 8 people who were protected inside an ark during a global flood. And those 8 people later walked off the ark, and according to Genesis 9:19, from them came the people who were scattered over the earth. Oh, wait a second. What do I mean scattered? Well, jump over to Genesis 11, and let's talk about an event known as the Tower of Babel. Basically, because of the sinful actions of the descendants of Noah, the Lord confused their language and scattered them from there over all the earth. That's pretty clear and concise. Okay, so we've got lots of people who were descendants of the 8 folks who came off the ark, and now they have been scattered all over the earth. That explains that we are still one race and that different groups of people ended up in different locations. But how do we get a bunch of different colored people if we are all one race? Well, follow along. This, of course, is a simplified explanation, but the basic principles are true. We all have a pigment in our bodies called melanin, which, depending on different variables, produces different shades of the one main skin color we all possess. Several genes control the amount of melanin produced and thus the variability in the skin shade. In fact, it's easy for one couple to produce a wide range of skin shade variability in just one generation, as we'll see in just a moment. Time for a quick genetics lesson. DNA is the molecule of heredity that is passed from parents to children. A child inherits 23 chromosomes from each parent. Each chromosome pair contains hundreds of genes, which regulate the physical development of the child. However, to illustrate basic genetic principles pertaining to the topic, we'll just talk about 2 genes, the genes that control the production of melanin. So, let capital A and capital B symbolize versions of the gene that code for large amounts of melanin. while little a and little b code for small amounts. Got it? Easy. Check this out. Take a look at the upper left. Let's say dad contributes capital A, capital B genes, and mom contributes capital A, capital B genes as well. Together, they will produce a child with capital A, capital A, capital B, and capital B. This is a kid with a lot of melanin, and thus he will have very dark skin. Easy to see. Here's the bigger point, though. Let's say dad contributes capital A, capital B, and mom contributes little a and little b. Well, the child's skin will be middle brown shade, the combination of capital A, little a, and capital B, little b, which, by the way, represents a majority of the world's population. Not only that, but if each parent is capital A, capital B, little b, the combinations that could be produced in their children could result in a very wide range of skin shades in just one generation. So, since Adam and Eve were the first people ever, it makes sense to conclude that God placed in them a combination of genes that could produce all different shades of skin we see. Those same combinations would be present in Noah and the 7 other people who boarded the ark. And because God dispersed people at the Tower of Babel, he dispersed the population, thereby isolating gene pools in the different people groups. Over time, different cultures formed in different locations with certain features like skin shade becoming predominant. And here we are today. And since we all go back to Noah and his family, it makes sense that we are all different shades of brown. One race, multiple people groups, just like the Bible teaches. Simplified for sure, but enough said.
All right. So were y'all able to hear that, by the way? I'm not for sure.
Yes, that was loud and clear on my end.
All right. Now when it comes to the, according to the academic scientific community, they even agree that Adam and early man would have been dark skinned as well. I'm going to flip back to my presentation to see if it would play the video. If it doesn't, I'll have to go back to YouTube. But let's see. I don't know why it doesn't work when I do that. It's kind of weird.
Yeah, they did a great job of Answers in Genesis about explaining the early people would have been brown or had melanin.
Right. I know some people kind of got hesitant. We're probably thinking the Answers in Genesis was say that they were white, but no, they understand that early man would have been dark skinned, would have been brown, which was shocking even to me. But yeah, so scientific community also says that early man Adam would have been dark skinned. So let's play this clip.
Jefferson may look European.
Nope, that doesn't work. So let's go to YouTube again. Man, I don't know why those clips aren't working. That is weird. So let me look this up.
But it's awesome that you're sharing this information to give people, sources to refer to in regards to the early people and Adam and Eve and how these people would have to look because it goes against the status quo,
Right. It does, because most of us think of a European-looking Adam, but really both biblical scientists and secular scientists both will say, no, it's likely he didn't look European. He would have been a quote-unquote man of color. He would have been dark-skinned with brown skin tones. With brown skin tones. Both him, his wife, and his children. So can y'all see that?
All right, it's there.
All right.
Jefferson may look European, but his Y chromosome tells a different story. It shows that what we look like may not really tell us where we come from. And it raises a question mark over the traditional image of Adam. For centuries, artists have depicted him like this, like a European. For many of us, this is Adam. Michelangelo's famous painting in the Vatican Sistine Chapel. He looks like a beautiful Italian who spends a lot of time in the gym. Did the common ancestor of all men really look like this? The story of Jefferson suggests he could have looked very different. Finally, Wells comes face to face with the man he's been searching for. A new portrait of the common ancestor of every man today. Without a skull, we can't know for sure what Adam looked like. But a combination of genetic evidence, Bender's forensic skills, and cutting-edge computer software suggests he looked something like this. Thousands of years after the Bible, and hundreds of years after Michelangelo, we have a whole new face for Adam.
I like the expression. He's got a very forcible look. He's intent on something, maybe taking over the world. You begin to get perhaps an insight into why these guys won out and why this guy's our ancestor.
Yeah, so both the scientific and the biblical community will confirm that Adam would have been dark skinned. But not only that, let me flip this. All right. Is it up there?
It's on the stream.
Okay. So even when we look at Adam's name in Hebrew, it means Adamah, which means ground, earth, soil, red clay, and red dirt. This is the substance Adam was created from. Adamah. Adamah, most of the time means the ground, the land, the earth, the soil, the dirt, and things of that nature. Dust. Earth, arable ground, land only. So Adam literally means red, and there is a etymological connection between Adam and Adamah, designating red clay or red ground in a non-theological context. The Hebrew word Adamah means land, ground, or soil. The word Adamah could then be more literally translated red ground, and the name Adam could be said to mean red man or man from the red dirt. And again, Adamah, red ground, earth. Therefore, Adam could have looked like the red dirt from which he came. This is the closest idea that I have in mind, that this would be Adam. Adam would be a reddish brown dirt type of look when it comes to his skin tone, which means he wasn't white, but a medium reddish brown. As you can see, the woman over here surrounded by red dirt, she does not look like it. You can clearly tell red dirt from a Caucasian, a European person. This woman has red clay on her face. Both of these women, you can clearly see that there is a difference. These are more girls near red dirt, and they do not look like it. And here's people with red Moroccan clay, as another example. I don't think Adam looked like a European, had a European skin tone. This is clearly a reddish brown. Now here's a man working, and his skin tone very much like a deep red, very similar to the ground that he's working on. Very similar. Here are two women with red dirt on their face. This woman, it literally blends with her face. And this woman has regular, like a dirt mask on her face, and the skin matches the red dirt. This is what I think Adam could have looked like, because we know Adam and Eve were created from the ground, and life was breathed into them, the ruach, and so they would have been like a reddish brown skin tone. Basically, just as biblical scholars say, Adam and early man would have been like a medium brown skin, not black or white, but rather just brown. They wouldn't be capital A B B, nor would they be lowercase a b b. They'll be capital A, lowercase a, capital B, lowercase b, medium brown. So medium brown includes all of this. So from Adam to Noah, you can read this in Genesis chapter 5, the lineage of Adam to Noah. Oops, hold on, I accidentally put something. The lineage of Adam to Noah. Now, the ark is mentioned in Genesis chapter 6, as well as man becoming wicked and the ark being built. And y'all get a chance, you can read that. And then the flood is mentioned in Genesis chapter 7. Global flood destroys the earth. Only Noah family survives. Remember this is my young earth model. So global flood. And I believe that the earth was once Pangea, and it broke apart underwater, becoming the earth we know of today. There's a before the flood phase, a early in the flood phase, and a late in the flood phase. So it kind of goes from, really it's like Rodina, then Pangea, then today, the tectonic plates breaking apart. So the ark rests in Genesis chapter 8. From the flood, the ark rests. You can read about that. I believe that Mount Judy is Noah's place of descent, location where the ark came to rest from the great flood, according to early Christian and Islamic tradition. Jewish, Babylonian, Syriatic, Islamic, and early Christian traditions identify Mount Judy or Qumrud as a peak near the northeast of the town of Jezarat Abin Ubuar at the headwaters of the Tigris River, where the modern border with Syria and that of Iraq. And it's mentioned in the Mount Judy as being the place where the ark rested. Is mentioned in the Samaritan Septuagint, Book of Jubilees, Josephus, and many others, as y'all can see on the side. So this is the location of Mount Judy. This is where I believe the ark would have rested. Perfect place for mankind to split apart. In the area of Mount Judy, there's a very interesting structure that seems to resemble a huge boat that I believe where the ark was. And y'all can get a chance to look into that. But there's a very large structure out there that looks like a boat could have rested there and split apart. And then, everyone would have came off it and, went their separate ways. So the Tower of Babel, if you want to read about that, it's mentioned in Genesis chapter 11, verse 1 through 9. And it says, now the whole earth had one language and one speech. And they said, come, let us build ourselves a city and a tower, whose top is in the heavens. Let us make a name for ourselves, lest we be scattered abroad over the face of the whole world, whole earth. But the Lord came down to see the city and the tower which the sons of men had built. Come, let us go down and there confuse their language, so that they may not understand one another's speech. So the Lord scattered them abroad from there over the face of all the earth, and they ceased building the city. Therefore, the name is called Babel, because there the Lord confused the language of all the earth. And from there, the Lord scattered them abroad over the face of all the earth. And I believe that the Tower of Babel would have been somewhere in Mesopotamia or Iraq. So from Shem to Peleg, and you read this in Genesis chapter 10, verse 21 through 25, and Genesis chapter 11, verse 10 through 19. From Shem to Peleg is interesting. Various interesting events happen. In the days of Peleg, the earth was divided. This may allude to migration or when the Tower of Babel occurred. Here it is. Here's the genealogy of Shem. This is the genealogy of Shem from Shem was 100 years old and begot Arphaxad 2 years after the flood. And Arphaxad, then Shelah, then Eber lived 34 years and begot Peleg. After he begot Peleg, Eber lived 430 years and begot sons and daughters. Peleg lived 30 years and begot Ruth. Here's the genealogy. So this is where Eber is. This is Peleg. So it's really only about 3 generations after the flood. that I believe the Tower of Babel could have took place. The children, Genesis chapter 10, verse 21 through 25, the children were born also to Shem, the father of all the children of Eber. Arphaxad begot Shelah, and Shelah begot Eber. To Eber were born 2 sons. The name of one was Peleg, for in this day the earth was divided. Very important. Peleg, for in his days the earth was divided. And I believe this is when people began to migrate from Shinar. So, young earth, Israel's Afro-Asiatic Semitic ancestors. Now we begin with Abraham to understand genetically who the Israelites would be. But also we will still need to understand Abraham's ancestors as well. Connecting what we know about the origins of Semites in academia, also what we know about the origins of Semites in the Bible. We're going to harmonize the scriptures and anthropology, and it all starts with Abraham. So this is the young earth model I'm getting into. We will begin with Abraham and work our way backwards. Does the scripture give us any information about Abraham that we can use to get an idea as to who he might be? First of all, we know Abraham is an Afro-Asiatic Semite according to his genealogy. Side note, and this is an important side note, everything that I'm about to say, you can still use for an old earth model from here on out. But I'll be speaking through the lens of a young earth. So again, everything that I'm about to say from here on out, you can still technically use for an old earth, but I'll be speaking through the lens of a young earth. So both a young earth creationist and an old earth creationist can use what I'm about to say from here on out. So again, Abraham, still from the lineage of Shem, very important for his ethnic origins, and linguistically, he is from Shem. He is a Semite, a Semitic speaker. This is also very important. And again, academically, Semitic is connected to Afro-Asiatic. All very important to know. So this is a good start. But the next question is, where did Abraham come from? Where did he live? This could give us an idea of his ancestry. Does the scripture say anything about his home? Genesis chapter 11, verse 27 through 32, sorry. This is the genealogy of Terah. Terah begot Abram, Nahor, and Haran. Haran begot Lot, and Haran died before his father Terah in his native land, in Ur of the Chaldeans. And Terah took his son Abram and his grandson Lot and the son of Haran and his daughter-in-law Sarah, his son Abraham's wife, and they went out with them from Ur of the Chaldeans to go to the land of Canaan, and they came to Haran and dwelt there. So in the days of Terah were 205 years, and Terah died in Haran. Haran, by the way, is a city. This is powerful information. Abraham was from the city of Ur. There is a city of Ur in the northern Levant, which is believed to be the Ur Abraham came from. According to some Jewish and Muslim sources, Arupha is Ur Kasdim, the homeland of Abraham and the grandfather of Jacob, whom God named Israel. So here, Arupha, Ur, in southern Turkey, northern Syria. Here it is right here in Mesopotamia. So who built the city of Ur? What can we learn about the homeland of Abraham? Arupha or Ur is one of the truly ancient cities of the world. The city began circa 9000 BCE as a PPNA Neolithic site located near Abraham's Pool. It was part of a network of first settlements spanning West Asia where agriculture began. Now, what's interesting about being a PPNA, pre-pottery Neolithic A city, is that pre-pottery Neolithic B is part of the Neolithic of the pre-pottery Neolithic, and Neolithic culture centered in Upper Mesopotamia and the Levant. In Upper Mesopotamia and the Levant. Like the early PPNA people, the PPNB culture developed from the Mesolithic Natufians. And here's a good map of the Natufian range going from the Levant all the way up to northern Mesopotamia. Here's specifically PPNB sites. So, could have been built by, or likely was built by, Natufians because it is a PPNA site. The city of was built by PPNA individuals. Who are PPNA? Kind of already going to that. But when you read this paper, it says, I'll let Yeshua read this as I get a sip of water. He can start the second paragraph. Or actually, I can read that actually. All right, so
I'm sorry, I got it. It says paragraph. Second paragraph.
Yeah, or unless you want to read the first one.
Yeah, I can read the first one. It says evolution of agriculture in Southwest Asia. The 2005 book First Farmers, The Origins of Agricultural Societies provides an excellent resource for linguists who wish to explore the worldwide correlation between the origins of agriculture and expansions of languages. Prior to the adoption of agriculture in Southwest Asia and elsewhere in the world for that matter, the human tribe practiced hunter-gatherer techniques in order to survive. The evolution of agricultural in Southwest Asia generally follows a series of cultural transitions that begin with the Natufians, followed by the pre-pottery Neolithic A and pre-pottery Neolithic B, and then finally the development of pottery itself. The Natufians stand as an important cultural transition because they were the last hunter-gatherers in the Middle East. According to Bellwood 2005, about 14.5 thousand years ago, the Natufians appeared near the Sea of Galilee in what is now present-day Israel.
Yes. So here is the Natufian range, all the way from Sinai to northern Mesopotamia. Here's the PPNB sites again from the southern Levant all the way up to northern Mesopotamia. The people who built the city of seems to have been the Natufians. But is there more evidence that could confirm this, such as cultural and genetic? So again, is one of the true ancient cities of the ancient world. The city began in circa 9000 BCE as a PPNA site, Neolithic site located near Abraham's Pool. It was part of the network of first settlements spanning West Asia, where agriculture began. Again, Natufians. The Urfa man resembles both carvings at nearby Gabonliki teepee and statues found in Enel Gazelle. So there are cultural elements at that resembles places such as Enel Gazelle. So Enel Gazelle is a Neolithic archaeological site located in Amman, Jordan. Now, what's interesting about this is that why DNA haplogroup E1B1B has been found at 75% of the Enel Gazelle population, along with 60% of PPNB populations, and in most Natufians. So it's likely that, it actually is a connection between Natufians genetically with people of Ur as well. And again, in El Gazelle, here is the Y-DNA haplogroups found there. And here's a Y-DNA haplogroup found in Turkey, Anatolia. And again, remember the migration of haplogroup E from the Levant into northern Mesopotamia and into southern Mesopotamia. So the builders of Ur likely were the Natufians or the descendants of the Natufians. Now, what's interesting about Ur being in the northern Levant is that this could fit the biblical narrative of Abraham going to Haran, because both the city of Ur and Haran were close and major cities at the time. It says below that two of these villages would become a nuclei for the major cities of Ur and Haran. And remember what Genesis chapter 11, verse 31 through 32 says. It says, and they came to Haran and dwelt there. Terah died in Haran. So here is Ur and here is Haran. And it makes sense for Abraham to go from Ur to Haran and stop here because he's going south to Israel, than for Abraham to be all the way in this version of Ur going to Haran. It doesn't really, I never really quite understood the long journey going there when he could have just been at this particular Ur and go to Haran. Plus, this particular Ur is more associated with the ancestors of Afro-Asiatics, such as the Natufians. So now what's interesting about this visually seeing Abraham come. Now what's interesting about visually seeing Abraham journey from Ur to Canaan is that it's actually the same path and region of the Natufians, who are likely the ancestors of Abraham. As you can see, here is Ur, Haran, and then he'll go all the way down to Canaan. And this is actually the same type of landmass of the Natufian homeland. Since Ur was built by PPNA Natufians, my position is that Abraham descends from these Natufians who went to Ur. Knowing Abraham's genealogy, in a sense, confirms this. We know Abraham is a Afro-Asiatic Semite, and Natufians are the ancestors of Afro-Asiatic Semites. Again, understanding the genealogy is important. This paper makes an additional inference since there is archaeological and physical anthropological reason to believe that the Natufians were related to modern Semitic-speaking peoples of the Levant. With that being said, the Y-DNA haplogroup of Abraham would likely be haplogroup E. Haplogroup E was the Y-DNA haplogroup of Natufians and Neolithic Levantines. Such a scenario would also explain the presence of Y chromosome haplogroup E in the Natufians and Levantine farmers, a common link between the Levant and Africa. These findings contrast with both earlier Neolithic and Epipaleolithic Levantine populations, which were dominated by haplogroup E. So it's likely that Abraham would have had E. Semites from the lineage of Arphaxad could have spread haplogroup E in the Semitic languages from the Levant into Mesopotamia. Again, when it comes to the origins of Semitic languages, going with the Bayesian model, it says we estimate that Semitic had an early Bronze Age origin in the Levant, followed by an expansion of Akkadian into Mesopotamia. And again, E-M34 is the main Middle Eastern variety of Eomb and is thought to have arrived with the Proto-Semitic people in the late Copper to early Bronze Age, same time period. And here is a visual representation of this migration of E from the Levant to Mesopotamia. And again, follows the exact same model with Abraham's homeland. So, therefore, during this time period of spreading and migration is when Abraham's Natufian or Proto-Semitic ancestors left the southern Levant and went to the northern Levant and built the city of Ur. Because of this, genetically, I believe Abraham would have haplogroup E. Side note, This is what I believe according to my young earth model, but obviously you can use this for an old earth model too. With all that being said, who would the Natufians be in a young earth model? When was the Neolithic period and migration period? What Semites were in the Levant before Abraham arrived? Let's answer all these questions and flesh this out more, flesh out the young earth model a little bit more. So, Semites in Canaan pre-Abraham. I believe there were Semites in the Levant before Abraham arrived. These Semites would be distant relatives to Abraham. And these Semites in the Levant would be the descendants of the Natufians that didn't migrate north into other locations. Evidence in the scriptures for Semites in the Levant before Abraham is Melchizedek. Melchizedek was likely a Semite. Melchizedek, king of Salem, priest of the Most High God. Genesis, you can find this in Genesis chapter 14, verses 18 through 20. Melchizedek knew the culture, and let me actually read this. Then Melchizedek, king of Salem, brought out bread and wine. He was the priest of God Most High, and he blessed him and said, "Blessed be Abraham of God Most High, possessor of heaven and earth, and blessed be God Most High, who has delivered your enemies into your hand." And he gave him a tithe of all, and he gave him a tenth of all. Melchizedek knew the culture and customs of Semites in that period of time. Furthermore, Melchizedek was said to be the priest of the Most High. This is why I believe Melchizedek was from Shem, because according to scriptures, Shem was more associated with the Most High. Specifically, this mantle was passed down by Eber, the first Hebrew, passed down to Eber, who was the first Hebrew. In Genesis chapter 9, verse 26, it says, "And he said," and this is Noah speaking, "and he said, blessed be the Lord God of Shem." And then in Genesis chapter 10, verse 21, it reads, "The children were born also to Shem, the father of all the children of Eber." This mantle is being passed down. Some people even believe that Melchizedek was Shem. An ancient tradition tells us that Melchizedek was actually one and the same as Shem, son of Noah, and that Shalom was none other than the very place that Abraham would eventually rename Ariah. So Shalom is the second half of Ariah, Shalom, Jerusalem, or Jerusalem, as we would say today. This could be true because this actually could be true that Melchizedek is Shem, because in a young earth model, Shem and Abraham would have lived in the same time period. Here is the close image of Shem. So Shem lived to be about 600 years old, and here is Abraham. So they actually would have lived around the same time period if you go with the literal interpretation of these ages. Shem and Abraham both were living at the same time, and Shem actually almost outlived Abraham. And Eber would have definitely outlived Abraham just by a few years, if you go by the literal interpretation. One interesting fact about Melchizedek is that he was a king. He was a king of Jerusalem. With that being said, with him being the king of Jerusalem also leads me to believe that his people, because a king rules over a people, a king has a kingdom, and I believe that his people would have been Semitic. Remember, Melchizedek, king of Salem, the priest of God Most High. What's interesting about Salem or Jerusalem is that the land was likely settled by descendants of Natufians back in the Neolithic period. There, the Gihon spring attracted shepherds who camped near the water between 6,000 and 7,000 years ago, living between ceramics, and flint artifacts during the Chalcolithic or Copper Age. So the first 3,000 years, 5,000 to 2000 BCE, near the spring that flowed down the slope of the hill and the stream at its base, shepherds would occasionally set up camp with their flocks. Their presence is marked by sacraments and flint artifacts 6,000 to 7,000 years ago. Hundreds of years later, permanent houses began to be built. And about 5,000 years ago, which is 3000 BC, the place had already become a small village whose residents used the natural caves in the side of the mountain for burial. And this is from Haaretz, why is Jerusalem called Jerusalem? Going by the archaeological evidence found so far, Jerusalem was founded about 6,000 years ago, and it may have been roughly the name from the beginning. Now, what's interesting about this is that pre-Pottery Neolithic divided into pre-Pottery Neolithic A and the following pre-Pottery Neolithic B. This is around the time from 10,000 to 6,000 years. To 10,000 BC to 6,500 BC. These were originally defined by Kathleen Kenyon in the site in the type site of Jericho, Palestine. Around 9,000 BCE, during the pre-Pottery Neolithic A, the world's first town, Jericho, appeared in the Levant. So Jericho, by the way, if y'all didn't know, is one of the oldest cities in modern-day Palestine, and it was built by Natufians. Here is actually a forensic reconstruction of Jericho Natufian. And so, the Natufian communities may be the ancestors of the builders of the first Neolithic settlements in the region, which may have been the earliest in the world. The Natufians founded the settlement where Jericho in Palestine is today. And the PP and B is connected again, as I said, to Natufians and the early PP and A people. And again, when it comes to the origin of Semites, there is archaeological and physical anthropological evidence for a relationship between modern Semitic-speaking populations and the Levant and the Natufians. So the descendants of the Natufians, Proto-Semites, built Jericho. Melchizedek, or at least his people, come from these Natufian Semitic populations. The priesthood was passed down from Shem to Eber to Melchizedek. And he said, "Blessed be the Lord God of Shem," and the children were born also to Shem, the father of all the children of Eber, Melchizedek, king of Salem, the priest of God Most High. So what's interesting about the name of Jerusalem, the name Shalom /Shelah, is found in the account of Melchizedek in Genesis chapter 14, verse 18. And Melchizedek, king of Salem, brought forth wine and bread and wine, and he was the priest of the Most High God, El Elyon. That the name Shalom refers to Jerusalem is evidenced by Psalms chapter 76, verse 2, which uses Salam as parallel for Zion. And Salem is an ancient Middle Eastern town mentioned in the Bible. The name refers to the royal city of Melchizedek and is traditionally identified with Jerusalem. It is also mentioned in Hebrews chapter 7. So I suppose the next question is, when did Semites enter the Levant? I stated before, it's believed that Shem is Melchizedek. Thus, the father of Semites was in the Levant. if Melchizedek is Shem, this means, early Semites, well, the father of Semites is in the Levantine region. The ancient tradition tells us that Melchizedek was actually one and the same as Shem, son of Noah. And so here's, by the way, if you don't know where Salem or Jerusalem is, here's a good image of it. So I don't know if Melchizedek is Shem, but Shem definitely could have settled the Levant first, especially when mankind began to build the Tower of Babel. With that being said, there's even another interpretation that Eber also settled the Levant and didn't participate in the building of the Tower of Babel. So basically what I'm getting at is I believe Shem and Eber are the first settlers of Israel. So as stated before, Shem could have settled the Levant, and I believe Eber, not wanting to participate in the building of the Tower of Babel, also joined Shem in the future land of Israel. This is why the priesthood is found with Melchizedek in Jerusalem. As I said before, and he said, "Blessed be the Lord God of Shem," and the children were born also to Shem, the father of the children of Eber. An ancient interpretation tells us that Melchizedek was actually one and the same as Shem, the son of Noah. So 13th century Muslim historian Abu al-Falid relates a story noting that the patriarch Eber, great-grandson of Shem, refused to help build the building of the Tower of Babel. So his language was not confused when it was abandoned. He and his family alone retained the original human language, Hebrew, a language named after Eber. And that's what I sort of believe. I believe that Adam and the original tongue was like a Proto-Afroasiatic tongue or a pre-Proto-Semitic tongue. And so Shem is here in Israel. Eber means to cross over or to go beyond. I believe Eber crossed over the Euphrates to the Levant in order to not be part of evil. Similar to how Abraham, the Hebrew, would do the same. Eber acts as both a spiritual and physical example like Abraham. Then one who had, and here's actually the first mention of Abraham being called Hebrew, the one who had escaped came and told Abraham the Hebrew. This is where we get Hebrew from later on. And Eber means region beyond, or to go beyond, to pass over, through, or bypass on. And so you see this example being from Shem to Eber to Abraham, the Hebrew. And so here's a quick video that I'm going to play.
Eber was born 4 generations after Noah, just 3 generations after the Great Flood.
Eber
was born.
By the way, I'm not going to try to look this video up. I think the people can just hear it, and I think that'll be good. You think that'll be fine, Joshua, if they just hear it instead of have to look at it?
Yeah, I mean, if the video is clear, I mean, they should be able to get an understanding.
Okay, I'll just do that because I'm not even going to try to, unless I were to, actually, let me try something. Let me try it this way.
Eber was born 4 generations after Noah.
No, that's not working. Actually, there's another method I could try. Let me stop sharing the screen. There's one more method I can try because I'm not going to try to look this video up. Takes too long.
So great presentation so far with the tying the Afro-Asiatic languages back to these people and your putative origin of haplogroup of Abraham being a haplogroup E. Very powerful sentiments in bringing out the spread of the Afro-Asiatic language and tying it back to the same places that we find with Abraham as in regards to and cities of that nature.
Yeah, thank you. A lot of people don't know about that being in northern Syria, and that is connected to, Natufian peoples and descendants of Natufians. So it makes more sense that Abraham would come from this since Natufians are supposed to be the ancestors of Proto-Semites and Proto-Afroasiatics. It's likely he came from the of northern Syria rather than the of Iraq. And plus, Jews and Christians and Muslims uh, partake that as being where Abraham come from as well. So
Yeah, that's very powerful information there.
yes, thank you. And that video it's coming up, taking a minute, but also may not just play it if it doesn't hurry up and come on. But yeah, that's one of the best ways to connect Abraham, to likely being E, because these people were spreading from the southern Levant up into northern Levant, and so it's likely that he would have carried an E marker. His ancestors, rather, would have brought that E marker into and into other places of northern Mesopotamia, since we know that Natufians basically were from the Levant all the way up to the upper Mesopotamian region.
Right. They say their community spread from the northern Syria all the way to the Negev. So that's pretty much irrefutable. So yeah.
Exactly.
And then you brought up the information about when Jericho was built about 9,000 years ago.
Yes. And like I said, this information can be used for both the old Earth and a young Earth model. You don't have to just subscribe to what I'm saying. This young Earth model, it can be honestly used for both.
You are also bringing up a point about Jerusalem, that it may have maintained its original name.
Right.
So I found that very interesting as well.
Yeah, it's likely that Jerusalem was built by uh, the descendants of Natufians. After all, Jerusalem, that's a Semitic name, it's an Afroasiatic name. And so it makes sense that Jerusalem would have been built by Semites. And again, Melchizedek, his culture is very, very much Semitic in nature. And so it's likely that Melchizedek would have been a Semite who descends from the Natufians, or at least his people, if you don't want to go with interpretation that he was a Semite, his people at least could have descended from these Natufians and other Semitic sites such as Jericho and Jerusalem. But I am ready now. I'm going to play this quick clip.
It's on the screen.
All right, let's go.
Eber was born 4 generations after Noah, just 3 generations after the Great Flood. The name Eber derives its meaning from the Hebrew word abar, which means to pass over, or region across or beyond. Thus, the name Eber hints of his crossing over the Euphrates River away from the land of Sin in Mesopotamia, where the Tower of Babel would be constructed. Now, the word Hebrew is derived from the same root word of Eber, indicating that Eber is an ancestor of the Hebrew nation. We find something peculiar in the genealogy of the descendants of Noah in Genesis chapter 10. In Genesis 10:21, when God introduces the line of Shem, the record changes its format and adds an introduction to the genealogy. God highlights Eber's significance by praising him even before listing Shem's descendants, calling Shem the father of the children of Eber. Think about that. Shem's son was Arpachshad, and his grandson was Shelah. But God sets them to the side for a moment to express that Shem's descendants were the children of Eber. As Noah had called God the God of Shem, now God expresses a passing of the torch to Shem's descendant Eber, and in this manner points to Eber as an important link to Abraham.
Yes, and so a lot of us forget about Eber, and Eber is just a very important biblical character, biblical person. And so some could even say Melchizedek was Eber if you want. But let me get here. Tell me when it's there.
You good to go?
All right, so I do go with the interpretation that Shem and Eber didn't participate in the building of the Tower of Babel. Therefore, the language of Shem and Eber remained the same, i.e. Semitic. Now, this leads us into a deeper understanding, Eber being the father of the Hebrew race. Now, who the Natufians might descend from? And the migration of Afroasiatic languages from the Levant. Because, so basically, what I'm saying is, I believe Shem and Eber were in the Levant when the Tower of Babel was being built, and this could give rise to the Natufians and the Afroasiatic languages in the Levant. So, Eber, the father of the Hebrew race. So, the Book of Jubilees gives us insights on the details of the Book of Genesis. Jubilees is considered, is even considered or called the Little Genesis. Therefore, we are going to look at the Book of Jubilees to see the woman that Eber married. Disclaimer: I only see the Book of Jubilees as a historical narrative. I don't use the Book of Jubilees for salvation issues. Again, I only use it for history. With that being said, I do believe the Book of Jubilees can somewhat be considered canon. If you don't rock with the Book of Jubilees, then you can stop here with the video, or you can still keep listening to hear my point out. But if you want to know one reason why I believe in the Book of Jubilees, it's because it was found in the Qumran caves with the Dead Sea Scrolls. Jubilees was even originally written in Hebrew. Experts just discovered more fragments of the Dead Sea Scrolls. A fragment of the Dead Sea Scrolls with text from the Book of Jubilees is on display in the exhibit, The Dead Sea Scrolls. Between 1947 through 1956, approximately 15 copies of the Book of Jubilees were found among the Dead Sea Scrolls. Translating the Book of Jubilees, originally written in Hebrew, Jubilees continues to interest scholars for its commentary on the earlier text. James Van Der Kam is the John A. O'Brien Professor of Hebrew Scriptures at the University of Notre Dame and a scholar of the Dead Sea Scrolls, a collection of ancient religious texts found between 1947 through 1956 in the caves and around Qumran, along the northwest shore of the Dead Sea, about 15 miles east of Jerusalem. According to the Book of Jubilees, who is Eber's wife? So it says, Book of Jubilees, chapter 8, verse 9 through 10 and 11, it says, Eber, and he took unto himself a wife, and her name was Azurad, the daughter of Nimrod. She bare him a son, and he called his name Peleg. The wife, Eber's wife, was the daughter of Nimrod. Who is Nimrod? The Book of Jubilees mentions the name of Nimrod, the Greek form of Nimrod, only as being the father of Azurad, the wife of Eber, the mother of Peleg, chapter 8:7. This account would thus make Nimrod an ancestor of Abraham and hence all Hebrews. According to the scriptures, Nimrod was the son of Cush. Genesis chapter 10, verse 8. Cush begot Nimrod, and he began to be a mighty one on the earth. Nimrod, the son of Cush, is therefore the great-grandson of Noah. Nimrod, father Cush, was a son of Ham, according to the scriptures. Cush was the oldest son of Ham and a grandson of Noah. Genesis chapter 10, verse 7, if you want more information. There was an ancient civilization by the name of Cush, also known as Nubia. Cush is a Hebrew name that is possibly derived from Cush, from Cash, the Egyptian name of Lower Nubia, and later of the Nubian kingdom of Nabata, known as the kingdom of Cush. The form Cush appears in Egyptian records as early as the reign of Menotep II, 21st century BC. In an inscription detailing his campaigns against the Nubian region, the Nubian kingdom was centered at Moreo in a modern-day nation of Sudan. Cush was the name of an ancient kingdom in northeast Africa. The portion of the Nile Valley between the first and second cataracts was called Cush by the pharaonic pharaohs. The pharaonic Egyptians. Through Western nations preferred the Greek appellation Nubia. One of the earliest mentions of the name Cush is found on an inscription of the early Middle Kingdom, 1970 BCE. During the second millennium BCE, Cush was absorbed into the Egyptian Empire, first as far as the Second Cataract under the Middle Kingdom rulers, and then as far as the sixth by the New Kingdom pharaohs. It was probably the Cushite king Shabaku 707 through 697 who encouraged. Actually, that's not important. So, according to the Bible, Cush, the son of Ham, which is mentioned in Genesis chapter 2, 13, 10 through chapter 10, verse 6 through 8, Ezekiel chapter 8 through 5, and First Chronicles chapter 1 through 8 through 10, represents Northeast African people. Most modern translations following the Septuagint, the whole of East Africa was called Cush by the Greeks. So Cush, the son of Ham, basically is the people of the southern Nile Valley region. And here's the kingdom of Cush was an ancient kingdom in Nubia centered along the Nile Valley in what is now northern Sudan and southern Egypt. So the kingdom of Cush, despite the Egyptian presence in Upper Nubia, the indigenous culture of the region continued to flourish. The kingdom of Cush, from World History Encyclopedia. The Cush was a kingdom in northern Africa in the region corresponding to modern Sudan. The larger region around Cush, later referred to as Nubia, was inhabited 8000 BC, but the kingdom of Cush rose much later. The Kerma culture, so named after the city of Kerma in the region, is attested as early as 2500 BCE, and archaeological evidence from Sudan and Egypt show that Egyptians and the people of Cush region were in contact from the early dynastic period of Egypt, which is 3150 through 2613 BCE onwards. So the land of Nubia. The region of Nubia begins at the point just south of Khartoum in the Sudan, where the Blue and White Nile join, and is linked to Egypt by the Nile River, which flows northward through both lands to the Mediterranean. The first cataract just south of Aswan in Egypt marked the separation of Egypt and Nubia, while the second cataract separates Upper South and Lower North Nubia. This is the book Nubians. The ancient Egyptians referred to the region located south of the third cataract of the Nile River, in which the Nubians dwelt, as Cush. Most often in the phrase "thou Cush" or "wretched Cush." The Nubian past. The name of Egypt the name of Nubia has long been used to describe Egypt's southern neighbor. Historically, other names have been applied to this region and its inhabitants, Kush being a widely used term in the ancient world, as well as Ethiopia. The land of Nubia, stretching along the river Nile from the first cataract southward, has never been very closely or accurately defined. The name Nubia has been used in a much more wider sense when dealing with the past, and sometimes it has been used as almost countertenuous with the ancient Sudan and the area of the present Republic of the Sudan. It has been suggested that the name comes from the ancient Egyptian word nub, meaning gold, since the area was an important source of gold in the pharaonic times and later, but it is not the name of the ancient Egyptians used for the country, and is suggested may be fanciful. The Egyptians frequently called the area Taseti, land of the bow, or Kush, probably a name used by the inhabitants themselves. So again, here is Kush and here is Nubia. Same people, same place. The descendants of Kush are Nubians, and Nubia related groups, likely both genetically and linguistically. Focusing on language, it's commonly believed that Nubians spoke a Nilo-Saharan language. The Nilo-Saharan language are a proposed family of African languages spoken by some 50 to 60 million people, mainly in the upper parts of the Kari and Nile rivers, including historic Nubia, north of where the two tributes of the Nile meet. So we're focusing on Nilo-Saharan, specifically Eastern Sudanic. So let's look at Eastern Sudanic languages. In most classifications, the Eastern Sudanic languages are a group of 9 families of languages that may constitute a branch of the Nilo-Saharan language family. Eastern Sudanic languages are spoken from northern Egypt from southern Egypt to northern Tanzania. So there's Nilo-Saharan, then there's a branch known as Eastern Sudanic. And when it comes to the northern branch, Nubia is also included. So the northern Eastern Sudanic, again, from Nilo-Saharan to Eastern Sudanic to Northeastern Sudanic subdivisions, Nubian. So the Nubian languages are a group of related languages spoken by the Nubians. They form a branch of the Eastern Sudanic languages, which is part of the wider Nilo-Saharan phylum. So you get to Nilo-Saharan, to Eastern Sudanic, to Northeastern Sudanic, to Nubian. And then the subdivisions are now Nubian and Western Nubian. So here are some trees. There are various trees when it comes to the Nubian language being connected to Nilo-Saharan and Sudanic. So I'll just show you a few of them. You have Banner from 2000. Then you have Riley from 2009. Then you have Star Rosian from 2015. Then you have Star Rosian from 2014, sorry. Then you have Roger Benchen, 2019. Then you have Dim Mandela and Jake Obi, 2020. So this is even more recent. Genetically, so basically, linguistically speaking, Nubian is an Nilo-Saharan language. So genetically speaking, Nubians and Nilotics would anciently be closely related. The Nilotic languages are a group of related languages spoken across a wide area between South Sudan and Tanzania by Nilotic peoples. So the Nilo-Saharan to the Eastern Sudanic to Nilotic, the subdivisions are Eastern Nilotic, Southern Nilotic, and Western Nilotic. Now, in most classifications, the Eastern Sudanic languages are a group of 9 languages 9 families of languages that are constituted a branch of the Nilo-Saharan language family. Eastern Sudanic languages are spoken from southern Egypt to northern Tanzania. So here is the Nilo-Saharan, Eastern Sudanic. Then you have the subdivisions. The northern ones include Nubian, and the southern ones include Nilotic. So why is this interesting? I'll let Yeshua take on this one as I get a sip of water.
All right. So a proto-Nilotic unity separate from an earlier undifferentiated Eastern Sudanic unity is assumed to have emerged by the 3rd millennium BC. The development of proto-Nilotes as a group may have been connected with their domestication of livestock. The Eastern Sudanic unity must have been considerably earlier still, perhaps around the 5th millennium BC, while the proposed Nilo-Saharan unity would date to the Upper Paleolithic about 15,000 years ago. The original locus of the early Nilotic speakers was presumably east of the Nile in what is now South Sudan. The Proto-Nilotes of the 3rd millennium BC were pastoralists, while their neighbors, the Proto-Central Sudanic peoples, were mostly agriculturalists. Nilotic people practice a mixed economy of cattle, pastoralism, fishing, and seed cultivation. Genetic and linguistic studies have demonstrated that Nubian people in northern Sudan and southern Egypt are an admixed group that started off as a population closely related to Nilotic people. This population later received significant gene flow from Middle Eastern and other East African populations. Nubians are considered to be the descendants of the early inhabitants of the Nile Valley who later formed the Kingdom of Kush, which included Kerma and Meroe, and the medieval Christian kingdoms of Makuria, Nobatia, and Alodia. These studies suggest that population closely related to Nilotic people long inhabited the Nile Valley as far as southern Egypt in antiquity. Linguistically, Nilotic people are divided into 3 subgroups: Eastern Nilotic, spoken by Nilotic populations in southwestern Ethiopia, eastern South Sudan, northeastern Uganda, western Kenya, and northern Tanzania, includes language like Turkana, Masai, and Bari, and Teso-Lotukoma. Southern Nilotic, spoken by Nilotic populations in western Kenya, northern Tanzania, and eastern Uganda, includes Kalenjin and Datog. Western Nilotic, spoke by Nilotic peoples in South Sudan, northeastern Congo, DRC, northern Uganda, southwestern Kenya, northern Tanzania, and southwestern Ethiopia, includes Dinka languages, Luo languages, and the Buru languages.
So why is this important? So when we think about the descendants of Cush, son of Ham, they likely spoke a Nilo-Saharan language. They likely first settled places like Sudan and genetically were a Nilotic people. So what's the wide DNA of Nilotic and Sudanese people? By concentrated among Khoisan populations in the northwest and Nilotic populations toward the northeast in the Nile Valley, BT is a subclade of haplogroup A, precisely of the precisely of the A1B clade. So dealing with major Y-DNA haplogroups A and B, let's go a little bit deeper. Haplogroup, this is dealing with the upper Nile. Haplogroup A3B2-M1213 is common among the southern Sudanese at 53%, especially the Dinka Sudanese at 61.5%. And South Sudanese also have it at 45%. So a study by Hazen et al. 2008 analyzed the Y-DNA of populations in the Sudan region with various local Nilotic groups included for composition. The researchers found the signature Nilotic A and B clades to be the most common paternal lineage amongst the Nilo-Saharan speakers, except those inhabiting Western Sudan. There, a prominent North African influence was noted. Haplogroup A was observed amongst 62% of Dinka, 53.3% of the Shilluk, 46.4% of Nuba, 33.3% of Nuer, 31.3% of Fur, and 18.8% of Maslik. So here's a map of, or not map, but here's a percentage of haplogroup A in Africa. And again, showing that, people like the Dinka have it at 62%, Nuba have it at 46%, people of that nature. So here's a map of haplogroup A. And as you can see, a lot of clades are deep within the Sudan region and south of Egypt region as well. Here's another map of haplogroup A. And here's a map of Kush. And here's a map of Nubia. And you can see it sort of perfectly overlaps those regions. It's likely that the descendants of Cush, son of Ham, had a branch of haplogroup A. As I stated before, Paleo-Africans or true Africans are haplogroup A and B. This would probably be your Hamites mentioned in scripture that dominated Africa. Again, here are various A and B clades in sub-Saharan Africa. Again, a 2014 paper showed that haplogroup A was all the way in Egypt to the Horn of Africa, to Kenya. It was in Northern Africa. It was in Western Africa. It was in, of course, Southern Africa. Here's another paper dealing with ancient West African foragers. All the clades actually had haplogroup A and B. This is likely your Hamites. Here is haplogroup B, where it once dominated and still dominates in some areas. And again, here's haplogroup A. And E basically is an Afro-Mediterranean haplogroup that came into Africa, pushing A and B downwards, whereas haplogroup A is really an African haplogroup. But going back to Cush, son of Ham specifically, how would his descendants look? Well, here is a Nilo-Hamitic person, intermediate between the Nilotic and Ethiopic, that is associated with the Nilo-Hamitic or half Hamites. Dark brown to black skin, usually kinky, sometimes tightly curly hair. Here is a pre-Nilotic, ancient type with proto-Nilotic traits, today still found in the broader region of Sudan and Ethiopia. Black skin and kinky, sometimes tightly curly hair. Here's a Nilot, a specified African type native to the swamps and savannas of the Upper Nile, the region of South Sudan and adjacent countries. With their black skin, they belong to the darkest people on earth. Heads, long facial features, coarse, with a rather wide nose, full lips, and kinky hair. Nilots seem to be a relatively old group that might have extended further east into Ethiopia during prehistoric times. And here's a really good map of the Nilots being in Sudan, going all the way up into Egypt even. Then you have the South Nilot. This type common to the South branch of Nilotic people of Lake Albert, south to Lake Victoria in southern Sudan, Uganda, and western Kenya. Black skin and kinky hair. Then you have the East Sudanid, isolated Sudanid variety in the Nuba Mountains of Khartoum, Sudan, native to the region at least since the Neolithic. Dark brown, sometimes black skin, usually kinky hair. And then you have the Dinka, Nilotic proper, that shows the most pronounced Nilotic features, the tallest, most long-legged, and one of the darkest phenotypes in the world, typically found in the swamp areas of the Upper Nile and South Sudan, black skin and hair kinky, very tall, and the tallest of all modern phenotypes. And then you have the Selikelud Nilotic variety, similar to the Dinka, but with slightly modified features, typically found in the savannas of the Upper Nile of South Sudan. Black skin, usually kinky, sometimes tightly curled hair. So putting all this together, this information together, I would say that Cush, the son of Ham, descendants were Wadi Ne, A, branches of it, Proto-Nilotic, ethnically, some of them, and pre-Nilo-Saharan language. In the future video, I'll actually go much deeper into the descendants of Cush and Ham in general. So again, Cush would be a Nilotic person with haplogroup A, probably with a branch of A-M32 or maybe A-M13, one of those two branches. That's what a Cushite would be. With that being said, Eber's wife, Azurad, whose father was Nimrod and grandfather Cush, she likely was a Paleo-Saharan or Proto-Nilo-Saharan. Eber, and he took unto himself a wife, and her name was Azurad, the daughter of Nimrod. She bare him a son, and he called his name Peleg. Again, Nimrod is the name Nimrod. And Nimrod is the descendant of Cush. And Cush is the descendant of Ham. And here's just a good visual representation of everything that I've said. With that being said, this begins to paint an interesting picture about language, race, and migration. Going over to my next slide. Going over to my next and sort of my final slide for tonight. Tell me if you can see it.
It's on the screen.
All right, so Azurad, the wife of Eber. Azurad was a Hamitic African from the lineage of Cush. Azurad's father was Nimrod, and Nimrod was the son of Cush, and Cush was the son of Ham. Azurad ethnically was a Paleo-Saharan or a Proto-Nilo-Saharan or a Nilot. That being said, what would likely be her mitochondrial DNA? Knowing that she was likely Nilo-Saharan and Nilotic gives us an idea as to what her mitochondrial haplogroup might have been. The mtDNA studies by Stress et al. 2008 examined the maternal ancestry of various Nilotic populations in Kenya with Turkana, Samburu, Maasai, and Luau individual sample. The mtDNA of almost all the tested Nilots belong to various sub-Saharan micro-haplogroup L subclades, including L0, L2, L3, L4, and L5. Nilotic/Nilo-Saharan women typically carry mtDNA L. Therefore, with Azurad likely being a Nilot or Nilo-Saharan woman, she more than likely carried mtDNA haplogroup L. With that being said, is there any evidence of mtDNA haplogroup L being in the ancient Middle East? Well, haplogroup L2A1 has been found in ancient fossils associated with the pre-pottery Neolithic culture in Tel Halel, Syria. A specimen excavated at the Savannah Pastoral Neolithic site in Luxembourg in Tanzania also carried the L2A1 clade. Admixture clustering analysis further identified that the individual bore significant ancestry from the ancient Levant, confirming ancestral ties between the marker of the Savannah ancestral Neolithic and the pre-Neolithic, in the pre-pottery Neolithic. So we do find L2 samples, mitochondrial L2 samples in the Levant, in Syria. mtDNA L2 was found in Neolithic Syria. This could validate the story that Hamitic African women were in the ancient Middle East and admixed with Semitic or Asiatic men. What women carry this marker today? Haplogroup L2. Its L2A subclade is a somewhat frequent and widely distributed mtDNA cluster on the continent, as well as among African Americans. Several L2 haplotypes observed in Guianas and other West African populations share genetic matches with East Africa and North Africa. An origin for L2B, L2C, L2D, and L2E in West or Central Africa seems likely. The early diversity of L2 can be observed all over the continent, the African continent. But as we can see in subclade sections below, the highest diversity is found in West Africa. Most of the subclades are largely confined to West and West Central Africa. L2 has 5 main divisions, subclades: L2A, L2B, L2C, L2D, and L2E. Of these lineages, the most common subclade is L2A, which is found in both Africa and the Levant. L2A is widespread in Africa and the most common and widely distributed sub-Saharan haplogroup, and is also somewhat frequent at 19% of the Americas among descendants of Africans. It is particularly abundant in Chad at 38% of the sample, 33 undifferentiated L2 among Chadic Arabs, and in non-Bantu populations in East Africa, Kenya, Uganda, and Tanzania at 38%. About 33% in Mozambique and 32% in Ghana. In East Africa, L2A was found at 15%. In Nile Valley, Nubia, 5% of Egyptians, 14% of Kushite speakers, 15% of Semitic Amhara, 10% of Gora, 6% of Tigray and Tigrayan people, 13% of Ethiopians, and 5% of Yemenis. Haplogroup L2A also appears in North Africa with the highest frequency, 20% Tigray, which are Berbers, Fulani 14%. Found also among some Algeria Arabs, it is found at 10% among Moroccan Arabs, some Moroccan Berbers, and Tunisian Berbers. All L2 subclades present in Ethiopia are mainly derived from the 2 subclades L2A1 and L2B. The majority, 26 out of 33 African Americans, share haplogroup L2A. Complete sequences could be partitioned into 4 subclades by substitutions at NPS L2A1E-3495, L2A1A-3918, L2A1F-5581, and L2A1I-15229. Haplogroup L2A1B. Haplogroup L2A1B is defined by substitutions at 16189 and 10145. 16192 is also common in L2A1B and L2A1C. It appears in North Africa and Egypt. it also appears in southeastern Africa and it may also be a marker for the Bantu expansion. Now, what's interesting about this is that if that's the case, the ancestor of this haplogroup, L2A1, has been found in ancient fossils associated with the pre-Proto-Neolithic culture Tel Halel, Syria. So the ancestors of some Bantu women is from Syria. It's kind of interesting. But anyways, from this paper, it says all Ethiopian L2 lineages can be seen as derived from two subclades L2A1 and L2B. However, whereas the majority, 26 out of 33 African American L2A complete sequences can be partitioned into four subclades by constitutions at NPS 345, 3495, 3918, 5591, and 15229. So here's basically a map of mitochondrial haplogroup L2A1. It's seen all throughout Africa, as well as in the Middle East, and even in Iran and in southern Europe. What's interesting about mitochondrial haplogroup L2 is that it's even found in Jewish populations. L2A1C1 has a North African origin. It is observed in Tunisia, Sephardic, Ashkenazi Jews, Hebrews, Moroccans, Egyptians, Nubians, and Yemenis. And again, its ancestor is L2A1 found in Neolithic Syria. So L2A1 I2A is recognized as an Ashkenazic specific haplogroup, seen amongst Ashkenazi Jews with ancestry in Central and Eastern Europe, where it is presumed to have come from Ashkenazi mixture. I'll let Yeshua take on this one. Only read the underline.
All right. 80,000 years of interactions between Central and Eastern Africa, documented by major African mitochondrial haplogroup L2 by Marina Silva and others. It says L2A1 is the most complex subclade. L2A harbors lineages from all African regions as well as lineages of other countries, including non-African branches such as L2A12A to Ashkenazi Jewish diaspora. L2A1A has clearly a Western Central African origin and distribution, with many subclades suggesting a recent Bantu migration southwards, and is hardly present in Eastern Africa. This pattern is also visible L2A1C, L2A1F, L2ALI, L2ALE, and other minor clades. L2ALM exists essentially only in Western Central Africa. L2A11 displays a similar pattern in Sub-Saharan Africa, but with the peculiarity of a sub-branch present in Ashkenazi Jews, L2A112A. The clade L2A1 plus 143 shows several basal Eastern African lineages together with Near Eastern and Arabian lineages that indicates a migration in the early Holocene.
Yes. Yes. And so this is a paper, The History of the Slavs, inferred from complete mitochondrial genome sequences. Anyways, haplogroup L2A is widespread within Africa. Both of them could be associated with the L2A112A subclade and located on the same branch with the Ashkenazi Jews haplotype. The L2A1 haplotypes are observed in Germany, Romania, France, Russia, and Poland. As L2A haplotypes were reported in the Ashkenazi Jewish populations, the samples representing haplogroup L2A112A might be further evidence of of the occurrence of Ashkenazi Jews, DNAs in Poland, mtDNA pool. And so this is a paper you can read that deals with L2A being in Jewish people. And it says, and this is a woman who published it, DNA Deb Cates. And so she says, all right, and she says, a working theory of how our L2A1 genetic haplogroup with subclades of West African, South American Africans, Ashkenazis and Sephardi Jews, Africans and Caucasians of the Caribbean, and throughout the United States, Romania Gypsies, and many others, all sprung from the same ancestors. So I'm going on down. The haplogroup branch known as L2A1. This is what we're focusing on. Her descendant daughters will spread across Central Africa to east area now called Ethiopia. Others of her descendants will head north along the coast, settling in North Africa and Egypt, and even reaching the Levant, now Israel, Syria, Jordan, and Turkey. While others found themselves mingling with non-Africans, including Arabs, Hebrews, and Mediterranean traders from Spain and Italy. Now, going up, it says somewhere in North Africa, most likely near Egypt, a baby girl is born with yet another MT mutation. She starts the haplogroup branch known as L2A1. Some of her descendant daughters, along with others of their tribe, traveled into the Levant, or their daddies traveled into North Africa, and they began to intermarry with men belonging to the newly formed Hebrew tribes in the Levant. Thus, these people and their descendants came to identify as Jews. Some other descendants of our L2A1 Gal remained in Africa and migrated west. The Israelites who intermarried with African L2A1 women that the common ancestries of the Jews and African American branches of our match group was born. And this is again her paper. You can read the whole thing for more understanding. So mtDNA haplogroup L2 is an extremely interesting mitochondrial haplogroup seen in people from the Bantu to the Jewish people and many other populations in the Middle East and Africa. Again, L2A1B, is seen. It appears in North Africa and Egypt, Southeast Africa, and so it may also be a marker for the Bantu expansion. And again, L2A1C1 has a North African origin and is observed in Tunisian, Sephardic Jews, Ashkenazi Jews, Hebrews in general, Moroccans, Egyptians, Nubians, and Yemenis. I definitely see mtDNA haplogroup L2 being the mitochondrial haplogroup of Azurat, since it's found in Neolithic Syria of the Levantine region. I believe she could have carried L2A1. This could have been Azurat. I definitely see L2A1 being the mitochondrial haplogroup of Azurat, since it's seen in Neolithic Syria region of the Levant. But what's also interesting about the region L2 was found in is that it's the region of Amram Nehorim, or Padam Aram, the general region Abraham lived, but also the same general region that Isaac got his wife from, as well as where Jacob got his wife from. So this is Padam Amram, and this is the area where we found L2. It's sort of in that same geographical region. Isaac went to the region of Padam Amram to get his wife. Of course, we know Abraham was from that region, and Isaac went there. And Jacob would also go there, Padam Amram. So the wives of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob could have also carried mtDNA L from Azurat. considering that Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob did marry relatives. Plus, mtDNA-L is seen in Jewish populations to this day. If you look at the genealogy chart, you see that there was a lot of intermarriages among the patriarchs. Abraham technically married his half-sister Sarah, and Jacob married Leah and Rachel, who are descendants of Laban, who descends from Nahor, who descends from Terah. Isaac, Rebekah also married Bethel, who descends from Nahor, who descends from Terah. There's a better map. So actually, what's interesting, Terah married his niece, Milcah. Actually, here down here, Isaac and Rebekah are first cousins once removed. Rebekah and Isaac are second cousins. Jacob, Leah, and Rachel, they're second cousins once removed. And Sarah and Abraham are half brothers and sisters. And Lot, well, of course, we know the story of Lot, Moab and Ammon. You know, they're his kids are. Well, I don't even going to go into that. The incest. We know that there was some bad incest going on with Lot. But basically, I see a tight knit unit and family when it comes to Terah's descendants, and the female lineage could have carried L. So what's interesting about Zurad being African and marrying and / bearing children with Eber, a Semite, makes me wonder that if the African presence in early Semites is due to the fact that early Semites such as Eber mixed with African Hamites. This would be my notion from a young Earth perspective, but even with an older perspective, you can still say this, that there was basically a lot of early mixing with Africans and Semites. But as many anthropologists say, you know, early Semites were African. After all, the early Semites were just a few Africans arriving to find a lot of other people already in the area. You can find this at a conversation with Christopher Ehret. So Eber, Shem, plus Azurad, Ham. I suppose the real question is, can we find more evidence in archaeology that supports the idea that Southwest Asians, such as Eber, mixed with Saharans, such as Azurad? Basically, can the Book of Jubilees be validated in the notion of Orientals and Africans mixing with one another? So here's a paper you can read called First Farmers, The Origins of Agricultural Societies. Saharan people would have met and mixed with the descendants of Southwest Asian Neolithic population, responsible for the introduction of the Southwest Asian agricultural tradition into the Nile Valley about 1,500 years earlier. This resulting amalgam was later to develop into one of the most remarkable civilizations of the ancient world, a true synthesis of the Oriental and the African. Basically, Neolithic Levantines and Saharan Africans of the Nile Valley had mixed with one another. This does fit with the model of Shem settling in Levant. Then later on, Eber is born. He will grow up to marry a Saharan woman due to proximity. Again, Ham is here, and I believe Shem is here, so you can have a lot of intermixture here. Again, mid-Haliocene desertification of the Sahara with a retractation of the summer monsoon finally led to virtual abandonment of Nabata Play and other oasis settlements by about 4000 BC. And this might have led to a kind of refugee movement into Nile Valley, where Saharan people would have met and mixed with the descendants of Southwest Asian Neolithic populations responsible for the introduction of Southwest Asian agricultural tradition into the Nile Valley about 1,500 years earlier. The resulting amalgam was later to develop into one of the most remarkable civilizations of the ancient world, a true synthesis of the Oriental and the African. Within the Egyptian Neolithic lifestyle are found a number of significant cultural items of presumed Palestine origin. Even though no precise source can be pinpointed, such items include side notched and tanged bifocal flaked arrowheads occurring in the PP and A pre-pottery Neolithic A and PP and B pre-pottery Neolithic B in the Levant, as well as in the Nile Valley. So Eber, Semitic / Afro-Asiatic person, plus Azurad, African plus / Hamitic person. The way I see things, the union between Eber and Azurad and their descendants creates Proto-Afro-Asiatic in the Levant. Eber being a Semitic Asiatic and Azurad being a African Hamitic. The ancient union of these two peoples, both linguistically and genetically, creates Proto-Afro-Asiatic language and people. After all, Afro-Asiatic is Shem and Ham. Afro-Asiatic languages, also called Afrosan, formerly Hameto-Semitic or Semito-Hamitic languages of common origin, found in northern parts of Africa, the Arabian Peninsula, and some islands of the adjacent areas of Western Asia. This Shemitic and Hamitic union created Proto-Afro-Asiatic. Proto-Afro-Asiatic males carried haplogroup E, which is Eurasian from Eber, and Saharan Africans carried mtDNA L, which is African from Azurad. Basically, Eber equals haplogroup E, his descendants being Neolithic Levantines, and Azurad equals mtDNA L, Saharan Africans. Eber and Azurad, the father and mother of Proto-Afro-Asiatic. So here's a book that actually kind of goes into this. It says one language family is clearly linked to the spread of farming from the Near East. The Afro-Asiatic family includes ancient Egyptian and other languages that appear in early written records such as Akkadian in Mesopotamia. Skipping on down, there is a genetic hint of arrivals from Africa. The African mtDNA L2A1 has been found in farming settlements in Hillel in Syria at a pre-pottery level. Y-DNA E1B1B across both the north and south coasts of the Mediterranean is a clue that it was the male partner of L2A1. Then the sub-branches of E1B1B help to spread farming around the Mediterranean. So Eber would be the ancestor of Natufians and Afro-Asiatics. Eber, of course, would be the father of the Hebrew race, and Azurad, his Semitic wife, will be the mother of the Hebrew race. The bloodline of Eber and Azurad would go all the way down to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, ultimately the ancient Israelites and their descendants. Y-DNA haplogroup E equals Eber, mtDNA L equals Azurad. So, as scripture says in the book of Jubilees, chapter 8, verse 9 through 11, Eber, and he took unto himself a wife, and her name was Azurad, the daughter of Nimrod. She also bare a son, and called his name Peleg. Here's a visual representation. Ham, Shem. Go all the way down, Eber and Azurad, and they have Peleg. Then from Peleg, you get all the way to Abraham. So Eber and timeline. On my young earth model, I'll place Eber in the Neolithic period. Both Shem and Eber would have lived in the Levant away from Mesopotamia as sin grew. Eber was only 2 generations removed from the flood, so it's likely that Eber would still have been in the Neolithic Stone Age. Again, he's only about 2 generations away from Shem. Once Eber had Peleg and Joktan, I believe mankind advanced. And this is when you get the Neolithic Revolution, migration of mankind, because according to Peleg, name. It means the earth was divided, and possibly this could even be the time when the Tower of Babel was constructed and everyone dispersed. Again, Genesis chapter 10, verse specifically 25, it says, "And the name of one was Peleg, for in his days the earth was divided." With that being said, Eber descendants would have also dispersed from the Levant as Proto-Afroasiatics. One of the best examples of this is Eber's son Joktan, whose migration patterns best fit the model for the exodus of Afroasiatics in the Levant. And that's actually where we get into next week, Eber, Joktan, the son of Eber. And we can stop right there. I mean, not next week, but tomorrow. I'm going to try to finish this up tonight and tomorrow and do Joktan.
All right. Excellent presentation, brother. And I know the people probably have some questions for you, so we can, if you're ready to go into the Q&A, man, great sources. I actually have that one of those books that you brought up about the European, what was it called, the ancestral journeys, the peopling of Europe from the first venturers to the Vikings, where it talks about the role E1B1B played in the spread of Afro-Asiatic languages. So I thought that was a great source to reference. And, if you want to go to the Q&A, we can, and see if anybody has any questions.
Yes, I am ready for the Q&A.
All right, so everybody watching and viewing the channel, if you have any questions for our brother Ivry or the Hebrew of Israel, it's time to present your questions. Let me stroll up and down. Class in session say you're still leaving out info about E1B1A. What do you want to respond to that?
I stepped away. Can you repeat the question?
No, he said you're still leaving out info about E1B1A. I guess with people getting triggered.
Yeah, so I'm not dealing with Israel at the moment. I'm only dealing with the ancestors of Israel. So I'm just giving a general overview of their Afro-Asiatic Semitic ancestors. So I'm dealing with haplogroup E as a whole in a general sense. So I'm not really going to focus yet on E1B1A. I eventually will. Don't worry, I will. But remember, we're starting all the way back in a neutral standpoint as to who are Proto-Afroasiatics, where do they come from, and things of that nature. But I did technically mention E1B1A descending from Proto-Afroasiatics because in a paper it says that Proto-Afroasiatics had E-P2. E-P2 includes E1B1A. So I do, but you have to really what's a nice way to say this? You have to really hear my talking points, You have to really hear me out.
All right. Okay. That's Dasharab. This brother here, man, he's hilarious. You're going to have to educate him. He says, was Ham Semitic? Yo.
So for Ham, I say that he had haplogroup A and B. And I mentioned in the presentation that, for instance, Cush, the son of Ham, spoke a Nilo-Saharan language. And Nilo-Saharan is not Afro-Asiatic. It's a completely different linguistic group of people. So to answer your question, no, Ham is not Semitic. Ham will be as I said, Nilotic people, Nilo-Saharan people. And eventually I'll get into the Khoisan and the Pygmies, but I'm not doing that now.
Yeah, in that same book that we just got done talking about towards the end of your presentation, Ancestral Journeys by Jane Monko, he talks about the people in R1B going into what we call Cameroon, into the Chadic region of Africa. And he says if they have an Afro-Asiatic language, which we know the Chadic is Afro-Asiatic, that they must have had that language or obtained that language to speak with the locals there. So that would tell you that there was Afro-Asiatic language there already. Could it be Berber? Could it be a North African language group? We don't know, but he said he hypothesizes in that book that the reason why they would obtain that language or keep that language is to speak with the locals in sub-Saharan Africa in that particular area, which we call the Chadic region. And I think it speaks to what you brought out last week about the Congo, the Nilo. What is it? The
language of Niger Congo and Bantu does seem to have ancient forms of a Berberish Proto-Semitic link. I can actually bring that out. Let me just do that.
Yeah. Put that source on the stream because some people are not familiar with it. You know what I mean? And but
right.
the Ancient Journeys book was a very great book, and it actually speaks to that. With the Chadic people said, why would they keep that language group there if there was no use for it? There had to be peoples during that time that they were communicating with. Otherwise, it would have just disintegrated, and they would have just adopted the local languages, and there wouldn't be any surviving stratum of that Afro-Asiatic language that we do find in sub-Saharan Africa. Okay, we got some more questions. Okay, yeah, let's bring this out.
So this is the Semitic languages outline of the comparative grammar by E. Lipsky. You can find this on page 44. Down here it says the Lasio-Berber continued instead to occupy the original language area of the speakers of Afro-Asiatic. Their African origins may even be confirmed by a relationship of Afro-Asiatic with Bantu languages, which form the central group of the larger Niger-Congo family. Now, what's interesting about this is that Lasio-Berber, according to this scholar, it says very characteristics of Lasio-Berber and of Semitic are the preserved features of the erogative language type. Basically, he believes that Semitic and Berber are very similar, very closely related. So if he's saying that Lasio-Berber and Bantu are closely related, then basically he will also have to say that it's closely related to Semitic as well, using logic.
Facts, big facts.
But I'll get into that more when we actually deal with the ancient Israelites and the possibility of Niger Congo and Bantu people being Israelites, and trying to not be biased and trying to give a very just a strict breakdown of everything without choosing sides.
All right, so brother Dash Sharab again, man. I have to tell you, this brother's hilarious. He says, so the Canaanites were Nilotic speakers.
I'll go into who the Canaanites are on another presentation. Good question, but I'll have to save that for another presentation because y'all be surprised who the Canaanites actually are when I get it out.
All right. Ezekiel Ben Yisrael says, is there E1B1A in Israel during biblical times as E1B1A, not its parent clade EP2?
Technically speaking, you could say E1B1A was in the general area of the Eastern Mediterranean. We know that Ramses III and his son had it. Both Egypt and Israel is the Eastern Mediterranean, so you can say it was in the Eastern Mediterranean in the biblical times. But so far, it has not been confirmed that E1B1A was found in Israel. There's only been so many excavations. So we'll have to start digging more, but was it in the biblical region of the world of the Eastern Mediterranean, like Egypt and around? Yeah, it was there.
All right. Class in session says, I've read in some board where linguists say that modern Hebrew is Indo-European, which has Yiddish and Ukrainian elements. Do you want to speak towards that?
Yeah, I can go ahead. I didn't speak on languages, particularly on the Yiddish, but I am familiar with the Yiddish language. There was a paper done by Aaron Elhike. I don't agree with the Khazarian hypothesis, but I do agree with the linguistic hypothesis of Yiddish, and Yiddish being basically a mixture of Hebrew, Slavic, and Germanic Iranian languages. It is a bit of a mixed language because Yiddish was predominantly used for trade and things of that nature between the Jewish populations of Eastern Europe. So to shorten your answer, yeah, it's mixed. It's a mixed language. The purest Hebrew would be Yemeni Hebrew or Ethiopic Hebrew, but not Yiddish. So I advise you to study Yemeni Hebrew and Ethiopian Hebrew. That would be the purest form.
All right, Dasharab again. How are the Canaanites Semitic if their father is Ham?
That's a bit of a trap question, I think, because I never said that Canaanites were Semitic. But how are Canaanites Semitic if their father is Ham? Yeah, I never said Canaanites were Semitic.
Yeah, I think he's confusing. He's confusing language filing with the grouping of peoples according to the Bible.
Here, Dasharab, I'll give you this, since you really want to know about the Canaanites. Look up the people known as Hurrians, Hurrin, IAN. Again, Hurrians, Hurrian. Study that population, study that people, and you'll get a bit of an idea of the various people groups that lived in the region of Canaan. Because there wasn't just Semitic people out there. You had non-Semitic people out there. But anyways.
Yeah, he needs to understand also language groups can be picked up by external groups that didn't necessarily, originate the group. So I think he needs to understand that. Okay, Nikki Lane, is this a statement? Do you want to speak towards this? Nikki Lane says Semitic language is just Bantu. I don't know if this is a question or a statement, but do you want to touch on that?
I feel like that's more of a statement, but I can sort of touch on that. Semitic language is just Bantu. If you're saying that Semitic languages come from Bantu, I would have to disagree. But can you find Semitic loan words and Semitic phylum in the Bantu language? Most definitely. And I'll actually bring that out. When it comes to certain Bantu words and certain Bantu phrases and names in the language, you can actually find some Assyrian and Babylonian influence, and I'll get into that another time. There's a really good book on that. By a white guy, by the way, not a black
guy. Nikki Lane, if you have a question, I see you making statements. But if you do have a question for the brother, just, pose it in a question form. Let's see if I can find you another question. Loan words don't can E1B1 be okay? Ezekiel Ben Israel says, can E1B1A be Esau or Ishmael too, as E1B1B can also be Israelites with E1B1A?
That's a good question. Let me just read it one more time. Can E1B1B be Esau, Ishmael too, as E1B can be the Israelites with E1B1A? I would say I would say Esau would be more so the Greek population with haplogroup E, so that would be like E-V13. Ishmael would be one of the sub branches of E1B1B that can be found in parts of Arabia, but I'm not going to get into like the specifics. When it comes to like the Israelites, again, I'm sort of trying to wait until I get more closer to the Israelite presentations, but I suppose, give a little bit of a rundown of my idea. Like I said, I believe that Habakkuk E is of Shem, and when it comes to the period of the Exodus, we know that back then, like from the Neolithic to the Bronze Age, that there was definitely E there at higher percentages than it is today. And even today, you still find a lot of E. But I basically say that the ancient Israelites would have predominantly been E in origin, been E. And when you look into the mixed multitude, even more various subclades of E would have been involved. I believe that Midianites, Ishmaelites, Moabites, Ammonites, they all had different subclades of E. And E1B1A would definitely be among the Israelite population during the Exodus, because Egypt and the Levant was dominated by E all the way back into the Neolithic period. So yeah, I would say that that's why I say that Israelites would have been a bit of both E1B1B and E1B1A. And I can get more into that later on.
All right. Nikki Lane is saying that you said Zurahad was Semitic and she wasn't. I don't think you said that.
Yeah. So I said Azurat was the daughter of Nimrod. Nimrod is the son of Cush, and Cush is the son of Ham. So I believe Azurat was a descendant of Cush, not a Semite. She mixed with the Semite Eber, but she was herself not a Semite.
Right. So, sister, you might want to rewind back to that portion of the video. The brother clearly, I think you put it in brackets too. I think you had, yeah,
African Hamite.
yeah. Somebody cleared it up. Elcom says he said Azurat was Eber's wife, creating the African lineage. Right.
Yes, this is actually a clear example of early Semites mixing with Africans. It's very important, and I was actually shocked to read that in the Book of Jubilees. A very perfect example that Semites and Hamites have been mixing for thousands of years, even before Abraham was born. Because remember, Eber is like 5 generations before Abraham, which even goes to show you that if you subscribe to the Book of Jubilees, then Abraham also had African ancestry.
Powerful. Okay. Nikki Lane, if you have a question, just pose the question in the comments. Dr. Rob, yeah. Once again, he says, so when did all the Bantu people switch to non-Semitic languages?
I wouldn't say Bantu switched to non-Semitic languages. I just believe that when the Bantu people went into Africa, they had mixed with various people such as Pygmies, Khoisanes, Nilots, whatever. And when you start to interact with different ethnic groups, your language is going to change and evolve. And I do believe Bantu has connection to Semitic languages, specifically, Hebrew and other Semitic languages like Assyrian and Babylonian. But we also have to understand that with them interacting with other peoples and mixing with other peoples, their language is going to have a slight shift in areas, and it's going to be more of a mixed language. So I still believe it's somewhat Semitic. It's just that it's a bit mixed as well.
Dr. Rob, during the presentation, he's really bitter and salty. He said, Hamitic hypothesis alert. What element that you're teaching is the Hamitic hypothesis? I'm trying to figure this out.
Yeah, that's what I was about to say. I don't really see where it's a Hamitic hypothesis, more like a Shemitic hypothesis.
Right. Yeah, the Hamitic hypothesis, for those that don't know, is saying that Hamitic Caucasians came into Africa and dominated and brought forth technology and stuff of that nature. The brother didn't even say any of that at all.
I specifically believe that, like, when it comes to Cush, his descendants were the Nilots, which are not Caucasian Hamites. They're the darkest people on the planet. Nubians are painted jet black on the walls of Egypt, and I'm not going with the Hamitic hypothesis. Hamites were not Caucasoid in my worldview, and they already had great civilizations, anyways, like Nubia.
Exactly. So it's, especially from a biblical standpoint, it's kind of hard to push a Hamitic hypothesis. Classes in Session says the interesting thing is that their languages have words from all of the nations that they resided in. Igbo has an ancient Egyptian words and so on. I guess this is a statement.
Yeah, that's actually important. That's an important statement, a good one. The Bantu and Niger-Congo languages have a lot of influence with basically Afro-Asiatic languages. You can find Egyptian, you can find, as I said, Assyrian and Babylonian. This goes to show you that we were traveling throughout the Mediterranean world, picking up different loan words and whatnot, and that can actually validate Niger-Congo and Bantu people being Israelite. I'm trying not to be biased, but y'all kind of already know my position. But yeah, it could validate that they could come from the Levantine region, which is in between Africa and Asia.
Okay, Nikki Lane says Bantu, not African, and hold it. Bantu is a descendant of Khoi and San people.
Okay, so Khoi and San people have a particular Y-DNA haplogroup known as A and even B, whereas Bantu people have Y-DNA haplogroup E. So I will have to disagree that Bantu people descend from Khoi and San people because we have different lineages, different Y-DNA haplogroups. Now, if you want to make an argument on the maternal side, the female lineage, sure, there was some admixing. Like you got the Rosa people, yeah, there was mixing with them. But to say that Bantu people descend directly from the Khoisan from a paternal lineage, no, I would have to disagree.
All right.
I'm hoping that's a joke question, to be honest.
Right, yeah, especially if you understand, genomic data.
And also linguistically, they're not similar. Khoisan or click speakers, Bantu don't click when they speak.
Okay, Dasharab again says, if Cush is Nilotic, so is Canaan.
To each their own. I'll deal with Canaan later. Yeah, I'll deal with Canaan later. I think I said that.
Yeah. I don't know. I guess he's a fan, man. He just wants to
to know. Yeah. I don't blame you, Disharab, but like I said, patience is a virtue. Just think that you're like Noah on the ark. Just get that mindset and wait, please.
Ezekiel Ben Yisrael says, when was the first traces of E1B1A found in West Africa?
It's interesting that you say that. We actually don't find, like, let's say, ancient Neolithic samples of E1B1A in West Africa. You find a lot of A and B in ancient samples of West Africa. I don't know of any papers that say, we found E1B1A in, I don't know, in
Cameroon.
Yeah, in Cameroon during the era of the early Bronze Age or something. I haven't found any papers that say that. From my understanding, E1B1A would have probably entered Africa sort of around the time of 700 BC. Because I definitely believe E1B1A was in the Eastern Mediterranean. That's how you have Ramses with it, Ramses III and his son. So I believe it came from the north and migrated southward. But there's actually a paper that says we really don't find like Bantu people related to like ancient sub-Saharan African lineages. I wonder if I can pull that up. Let me find that actually.
The Shimlaka paper. Yeah, that's a great paper. Yeah, a lot of the genetics would show because of that, the lack of ancient EM2, E1B1A, and sub-Saharan Africa. We don't have any specimens. So because of that, they used the migratory route to say that we didn't start getting there until about 3,000 years ago. Actually, ISOGG.org has been saying that for years, and that's a respected genetic website that breaks down phylogeny, human phylogeny, and migratory routes. So no, sub-Saharan Africa, we're not indigenous to sub-Saharan Africa. We're Johnny come latelys when it comes to sub-Saharan Africa.
Yep. Might take me a while to find this, so you can still read other Q&A.
Okay, yeah. So if anybody's studying DNA or aware of E1B1A, E1B1A and E1B1B both have ties to the Middle East. Like the brother brought out, we have ancient DNA samples of Ramesses III and his son, right? So these two samples reveal that E1B1A was present in Egypt. Egypt is right next to the Levant corridor. They're neighbors. So it's not hard to posit that this DNA was traveling throughout the Levantine corridor, which will connect them to the Levant, to Southwest Asia. That's why if you take a test at 23andme.org and your haplogroup E1B1A, it will tell you that you and Ramesses III shares a paternal ancestor who could have originated either in Northern Africa or Western Eurasia or Southwest Asia, because they know that our ancient DNA has been found in this vicinity, which by proxy will put us there. There was also a paper written in 2011 by Priya Murjani where they tested all 8 diverse Jewish groups. And within that cluster, they found out that all 8 Jewish groups go back to an ancestral Jewish population that was itself admixed with Africans. And how did they test for that? They used the Yoruba DNA component to determine that, and also another tribe, and I keep forgetting the name of the tribe. Yeah, the Luya Bantu. So we know the paternal clades amongst them, so we can posit that E1B1A would have been amongst the early Jewish or pre-exilic Israelite cluster. So we would have existed before the 8th century BCE. With the original Israelite cluster in that land. That's when you start seeing the material culture, the terracotta, the 7-spouted lamps, the stone-cut altars, the history that you read in the early Bible, Genesis and so on. You can see that we were there during the time when many of these edifices were erected. So,
a minute to find this. You keep going.
Oh, you don't have it? You found it?
Wait, no, I was saying it's taking me a while to find this, but I may not need to, but I'll keep searching.
Yeah, look up Shumlaka, or I think SHUMLAKA DNA.
I was looking through my slides because I think.
I would just pull up the article. I mean, it says it in the abstract that we don't have anything to do with these people that originally lived in sub-Saharan Africa. And it's kind of hard for people to grasp that, because the way we look at things is based on modern population density, which just means where majority of our people are in today's world. So they will say, well, majority of our people that we're related to would be on the west coast of Africa. So they think that, okay, we've been there for eons. It doesn't work like that. Ancient DNA is the basis to determine ancient populations, not modern DNA, because migratory patterns happen, migration happens, wars happen, famines happen, desiccation happens. Like the Green Sahara became a desert that forced people out of the Sahara, northern Africa, into different places like the Nile or back into the Fertile Crescent, and we started populating those areas. This is why you see different groups, in Greece and Crete and The early Levant, northern Syria, you can see the haplogroups, which you see E1B1A, E1B1B in some of these areas. Mesolithic France, Corsica, we bring up a lot. We invoke that. You see E1B1B, Mesolithic, Neolithic, Europe. These people were traveling, especially the farmers, because the farmers were the first ones to deal with population explosion. So, a lot of people forget that the further you go back in time, the smaller the Earth's population was. Especially in a hunter-gatherer society, they cannot support that many people. So the early sub-Saharan Africans would not be as numerous as we see today. There would be small clans broken up throughout sub-Saharan Africa. It wouldn't be, what we call meta populations until you start seeing farming and agriculture and, agrarian societies coming in and sowing the seeds of civilization to even support such a numerous group of people.
Right. I can just take some questions. I can't find this.
Yeah, I can actually. I'll let you take another paper. I can pull that paper up.
Yeah, you can. I'll let you do that.
There was a few more questions.
Yeah, I can answer some. I can scroll through probably through the questions and answers.
Here's the thing. I'm kind of confused. Like this right here. Is this a question or a statement?
All right, let me see. Bantu originally from the land of Afro. I guess you mean Africa or Afro-Asiatic. I don't know. All right, whoever made this question, can you tell me if you mean Africa or Afro-Asiatic? Because those two are a little bit different. Because you're saying Bantu originated from the land of Afro-Asiatic, I could kind of say yes, because one of the origins for Afro-Asiatic is in the Levant. So do you mean Afro-Asiatic or Africa?
Yeah, that's funny. I'm trying to find this PDF. Let me get you another one. Lance Single says Africa is like a Noah's Ark.
I mean, if we're going with a young Earth model, I have to say no. A Noah's Ark would have literally been like an ark, like a ship, a huge boat. Africa is a landmass. Now, I would say Africa is Eden, but you didn't ask that, so I'm not going to get into it. But
I think you touched on that during the presentation, correct?
yes, I believe that the landmass of Eden is Africa, but the garden, which is eastward in Eden, is in Israel. I showed a map as well that I like.
Yeah, man. I think this is the paper here, Ancient West Foragers in Context of African Population History. Yeah, this is it here. I want to get the main paper. Yep, this is it. This is what you were looking for. Read full text. I'm sorry, I'm trying to make it trying to make the paper big so everyone can see it, because right now it's not. Let me see if I can find it somewhere else. I'm on ResearchGate looking at it, but the paper is called Ancient West African Foragers in the Context of African Population History. And before I read it, let me just put it on the screen. I want to actually get a better version so you guys can all see it. We brought it out on the show before. Right here, January 22, 2020. Here we go. Okay. This one doesn't have the DNA Y chromosomes listed, but it'll give you a sense of what the paper's talking about. So here's the paper here. And it's called Ancient West African Forages in the Context of African Population History by Mark Lipson and others. It says our knowledge of ancient human population structure in sub-Saharan Africa, particularly prior to the advent of food production, remains limited. Here we report genome-wide DNA data from 4 children, 2 of whom were buried approximately 8,000 years ago, and 3,000 years ago from Shumlaka, Cameroon, one of the earliest known archaeological sites within the probable homeland of the Bantu language group. One individual carried the deeply divergent Y chromosome haplogroup A00. And, you know, for those that don't know, we're not A00. We come from the macro haplogroup E. So we're not related to these individuals. Reading on, it says, which today is found almost exclusively in the same region. However, the genome-wide ancestry profiles of all 4 individuals are most similar to those of present-day hunter-gatherers from Western Central Africa, which implies that populations in Western Cameroon today, as well as speakers of Bantu languages from across the continent, are not descended substantially from the population represented by these 4 people. We infer an African-wide phylogeny that features widespread admixture in 3 prominent radiations, including one that gave rise to at least 4 major lineages deep in the history of modern humans. So the point to take from this paper is these ancient sub-Saharan African groups are not relatives, are not the progenitors of majority of modern sub-Saharan Africans, which would have E markers.
There's another paper as well that goes into this too. That's actually not the one I was thinking of. There's even another one that talks about it. I'm trying to find that one. If you can give me a quick moment. I can also read some other questions while I look it up. But there's actually another one that even goes into it. That's either a 2020 paper or a 2019 paper. It's fairly recent.
Yeah, that one was from January 2020.
Oh, it was? Okay. It must be 2 then. Let me see. I can read some questions while I try to find it.
Okay. Let's see. A lot of these look like statements. Lance, if you got a question, just put it in the comments. I kind of agree with this sister. I guess this is comment. I guess this is a statement, but she said they weren't bound to Egypt and they settled the whole so-called tri-continental area. Also, there's no such thing as sub-Sahara. That is just a racist posturing from Eurotypes.
They weren't bound to Egypt. Who is they? And they settled the whole transcontinental area. Who are the they we're talking about? Are we talking about Israel or Bantu? That's all I want to kind of know.
Yeah, class in session. Could you clarify who's the they in this statement? I know we did mention Ramesses III, so I don't know if she's referring to that.
Right. I don't know if she's referring to Ramses, the Israelites, or Bantu people.
Okay, so she also said even the Yoruba have a hard time grasping the info that they didn't originate in West Africa. Oh, that's class in session.
Agreed. It's a very hard thing to grasp. It's like telling a Coptic Egyptian that he didn't originate in Egypt 100,000 years ago. People migrate.
She's questioning that paper. She said the ancients aren't progenitors of modern. No, if they'd have different DNA, different haplogroups, and this is what haplogroups show you, especially a paternal and maternal. They show you where you descend from, what male group that you descend from, or what female group you descend from. That's all haplogroups mean, a grouping of people. And we do not share the same haplogroups as the people that were found in ancient sub-Saharan Africa 8,000 years ago. And that were found about 3,000 or 4,000 years ago, we don't share the same paternal lineage as these people.
I may have found it. Let's see. Ancients.
It's funny that people deny haplogroups when it's showing you the group of males or mothers that you come from. And some people say, well, it's about your autosomal DNA. That's just like you saying that you had a child, had a son, and 1,000 years went by. He lived in the in China. His autosomal will be almost 100%. Your descendants will be highly East Asian autosomally, but they still are your descendants. That didn't change that, you know.
Right. You can't debunk Y DNA because it's a sex chromosome. Like, it's a fact that men carry X and Y, and women carry X, and haplogroups are connected to sex chromosomes. If you deny mitochondrial DNA and Y DNA, then you're basically saying everyone is like an intersex person.
Yo.
It is. Everyone's intersex if you want to deny haplogroups. Shoot, and sex chromosomes. It's a fact that a man is a. I ain't gonna get into it.
TV, the ET, regardless of your haplogroup, you can still be a Gentile and lack the spirit. That a statement or question or?
Yeah, I don't know how to answer that one.
All right. Just move on. Maybe you know what Alcam is talking about. He says, I've seen some Yoruba actually talk about the migration in the Oyo Empire.
I've seen some Yoruba actually, yeah, Yoruba have a lot of tradition about migration, and I can actually touch on that in a future presentation about various African peoples saying that, hey, we migrated from northeastern Africa, we migrated from Egypt, we migrated from even Israel, and there were even Europeans who confirmed that, yeah, these people actually could have migrated from this region based on their culture and language and DNA and other stuff. So yeah, I definitely agree with that. Yeah.
Okay, you're gonna like this one. Lance, my brother Lance. Brother said, how do we account for 40% of Africa was underwater in 1100s up to 300 feet?
Wait, what? How do we account for 40% of Africa underwater? And what? Okay, all right, so can you give me the time period of this? Because you said that, but are you talking about now? Are you talking about a couple of weeks ago? Are you talking about 1,000 years ago? Like, when was this, basically?
He said in the 1100s.
Oh, in the 1100s. AD or BC? I'm genuinely curious. AD or BC?
Hey, Lance, you know this is the wrong platform to be posing questions like that.
Oh my goodness. All a conspiracy. Atlantis is Africa.
Is that what he's getting at?
Probably. I wouldn't be shocked. But give me AD or BC, my guy. Let me see what you mean. I'll answer it. I mean, I'll answer any question.
Okay. Dr. Rob still going at it in the comments. I see you. Let's see.
I may have found it, by the way, but I'll let you keep answering questions so I can confirm if this is it, and I can read it out to you.
Nikki Lane is telling me that she's skeptical about scientific findings. She said, I don't buy everything science sells. I know a lot of movement happened. I know people can breed out, but honestly, we are still one family or direct descendants from the ancients.
Okay.
But what, yeah, I know, but what are you basing it off of? The science that you said you don't buy everything. I don't get it. Because if you're invoking common ancestry of all humans, that's a scientific find.
True. Good point. And also, we're not related to all ancients. Like every modern ethnic group has their own specific ancient ancestor. Like you can't say you descend from the Proto-Celts. Like that ancestry only belongs to the Celtic modern day people, like Irish. So I don't know if you're generalizing ancients. Like, can you be a little bit more specific by that? Like ancient Egyptians or ancient Nubians or ancient Israelites. Like, yes, we all descend from ancient populations of people around the world, but which population are you talking about? Not trying to be rude or anything. I'm just curious.
She followed up and said, saying we aren't related to the most ancient. Huh?
Who are the most ancients? Ask
I see what she's saying. She's going with haplogroup A being the progenitor of all the clades. That's what she.
Oh, I see what you mean. Like, yeah, we all share an ancient paternal ancestor. In the Bible, he's called Adam. In science, he's called scientific Adam. So, yeah, we're all related that way in the sense of descending from a common male and even a common female ancestor. Yeah, we're all. If you're basically saying we're all human, yeah. I mean,
All right, Lance, my brother Lance. He says, I have maps and cartographers showing water covering pyramids, and the writer stating he had to use old maps to place the names because they were underwater. And he's saying this took place AD, 1100s AD.
okay, that's pretty cool. Do a presentation on that, and I'll check it out. I actually want to check this show out. I heard it was good.
Yeah. Okay, Ezekiel Ben Yisrael has another question for you. He says, Are IUIC correct about the Chinese and Japanese being Moab and Ammon? And if not, who is?
I would say no. They are incorrect about Moab and Ammon being Japanese because of incest in their eyes. Like that is low key racist, but also it's kind of doesn't make sense because I don't see how doing mixed how incest is going to create haplogroup O. But anyways, when you say who they are you saying who is Ammon and Moab, or are you saying who is the Chinese and Japanese? Now I can give you sort of a breakdown of who the Chinese and Japanese are. I'm leaning towards the idea that Chinese and Japanese would typically have haplogroup O, with the Japanese having a little bit of D, but majority, Chinese having O. They could be Japheth because O is connected to N, O-N, and O-N is connected to F, and I believe F lineages are Japheth. It even says in scriptures Japheth will expand, and some of the most expansive people are the Chinese. I mean, if you want to use prophecy, but I would say that Chinese people would be Japheth. They're the eastern branch of Japheth.
Yeah, the second part says, if not, then who would be the Moabites and Ammonites?
So I'm debating on adding this into my presentation tomorrow. But if you really want to know who the Moabites and Ammonites are, I honestly believe that they could be the Amazigh tribes, and I can go into why if I add it into my presentation tomorrow. But there's a very strong possibility that they could be the Amazigh, which means that they'll have haplogroup anyway.
All right. Let's see. Lance told me don't follow my sword. Nah, brother, I don't want to follow my sword, brother. But you did say 300 feet of water. That's X-Foul-ish. Like, that's some X-Foul stuff.
Is he actually serious? I thought he was kind of just,
I know Lance. I love my brother Lance. Lance is serious about this. I know it's good now. Okay. Shout out to Lance. Lance, we waiting on you to come back on the show, by the way, too, man. Like Nikki Lane, I guess she's speaking to his comments. She said that's Egypt and its islands that were getting flooded, isn't it? But even if you deal with the Nile inundations, they didn't get 300 feet high.
No.
So
many people will die from that because, like, you should find mass burials of people from a flood that pops out of nowhere. On top of that, the alligators, the saltwater alligators of the Nile would like be chopping people up because their habitat is being changed and they're going to be going up into land, eating people and whatnot. Because those crocodiles in the Nile are super violent, and the hippos there too. So you should find archaeology of a bunch of people that got eaten.
Nikki Lane, pose a question. I know I'll read your statement, but if you have a question for the brother, I would, it's prime time to, get your questions in. Lance, if you got a question, get your questions in, brother. Thank you, Ezekiel Ben Israel, for, submitting your questions. Dasharab, that's a statement. We are all Noahites. Yes, we all come from Noah.
Yep. All right, here it is. And I'll let you even read it, Yeshua.
My brother Lance, man. He says, real quick before you read that, because he says they covered the pyramid. He's referring to the waters that he brought up earlier. This is why sand is in the Sahara. Sand comes from the sea.
All right, I'm not answering that. But
all right. All right.
Ancient genomes reveal complex patterns of population movement, interaction, and replacement in sub-Saharan Africa. This came out in in June 2020. So apparently there was 2 papers that came out in 2020 that deal with the subject, which is good. Here we can start here. So I'll read this part of the abstract, and then there's a part I'll let you read that's really good. So it says we refine models for the spread of food producers in Eastern and Southeastern Africa, demonstrating more complex trajectories of admixture than previously suggested. In Botswana, we showed that Bantu ancestry post dates admixture between pastoralists and foragers, suggesting an earlier spread of pastoralism than farming in southern Africa. Our findings demonstrate how a process of migration and mixture have markedly reshaped the genetic map of sub-Saharan Africa in the past few millennia, and highlighted the utility of combined archaeological and archaeogenetic approaches. Now, here's the interesting part when you actually get into the reading. You find it.
Yeah, that few millennia thing is huge because it's only a few thousand years, and people think that we've been there forever. So
Here's the part that you can read that I think you would like very much. Right here, that little bit.
it says by adding these new ancient genomes derived from archaeological, forager, and food producing populations to publish ancient and present day sub Saharan African genomes, we detect evidence for the contraction of previously widespread and overlapping, deeply diverged forager populations, indication that the arrival of pastoral populations in eastern Africa resulted from the movement of several discrete groups of herders from northern to eastern Africa, and the evidence of notable geographic diversity and patterns of herder-farmer-forager admixture during the spread of food production.
Oh, that's not it. What?
That was actually that was good too, though, because that's what we're saying. The farmers and the pastoralists would have been haplogroup E, and the foragers in sub-Saharan Africa would have been those A and B groups.
Yeah, true. That is a pretty good section, but there was something else that also went into it as well. But yeah, you're right. That is good on its own right. But I thought it was one.
Yeah, it says right there the Bantu farming speakers coming in and pretty much.
I'm scrolling through. My bad. I didn't know he was reading one.
No. I was just filibustering until you get there. Oh, okay. So yeah, if you know anything about the food producers, those are your pastoralists and farming populations. And prior to about 4,000 years ago, if you can get a book called the Oxford Handbook of African Archaeology, it talks about this. There were no cattle in sub-Saharan Africa 4,000 years ago. So we can use these as time markers to give an upper limit on when we actually came into sub-Saharan Africa, because our people were dealing with farming, agrarian, and pastoralism. So we start bringing these things down into sub-Saharan Africa. It wasn't indigenous to sub-Saharan Africa. So these things are like time markers to see when we got there. And like the brother said, he got the Bantu getting there around 700 BCE. That's actually comports with the archaeological finds of pottery assemblages. So the oldest pottery assemblage we find, the Bantu expansion goes to 800 BC.
This is a bombshell. I was going to save it, but I'll let you. I'll give a little bit of a teaser, so you can read that part.
Okay, previous ancient DNA studies from Africa have provided insights into population structure before the spread of food production in eastern and southern Africa, and revealed evidence of population turnovers in relation to changes in subsistence strategies in eastern Africa. Broadly, forager populations sampled between eastern and southern Africa were shown to have formed a continuous genetic line roughly following geography. During the pastoral Neolithic, people related to the Chalcolithic and Bronze Age Levantine groups entered eastern Africa and mixed there with individuals related to later Stone Age foragers, with individuals related to present-day Dinka, and what was proposed to have been at least two-step process. Ancestry related to the present-day Bantu speakers, which is today prevalent across sub-Saharan Africa, is absent from most ancient sub-Saharan African genomes analyzed to date.
Again, ancestry related to present-day Bantu speakers, which is today prevalent across sub-Saharan Africa, is absent from most ancient sub-Saharan African genomes analyzed to date. For the whole Israelite migrating into Africa thing, but I'll go ahead and reveal this part. But that's the paper I was talking about, Yeshu. But when you combine both of those papers, the one that you read and the one that I read, or the one that you brought out and the one I brought out, it really does paint a picture that we weren't there in ancient sub-Saharan Africa. Our genome is absent. So, and this paper reveals that there was, Bronze Age Levantines coming into Eastern and South Africa. But, I don't know. We'll save that for later. Even though, according to faithful to God, we were apparently there forever, I guess. I don't know. I'm not going to bring his name into it. Anyways, moving on. So, but yeah, we weren't there in ancient sub-Saharan Africa.
Oh man, you're gonna like this. You're gonna love this question right here, brother. And you're absolutely correct. There's no evidence of us being in sub-Saharan Africa prior to the Bronze Age and whatnot.
Right. It's not like we hate sub-Saharan Africa. It's just the science says we weren't there. We're going by the science.
Yep. And that's what's unique about what we do here at the source. We actually give you guys the citation and show you where we're getting the information from. So you guys all witnessed that. Now watch this, Avery. Watch this. Ezekiel Ben Yisrael says the Cherokee are said to have been around the Middle East too. Is there a link with these people and the Black Cherokee Native Americans?
Now, when it comes to the mitochondrial DNA and some of the tDNA of the Cherokee, some of them may have been in the region of the Middle East. Like a lot of Cherokee have mitochondrial X, which is seen in Anatolia. And I've even found studies that show Cherokee with Y-DNA T. Now, does this mean it's connected to Black Cherokee? First of all, I'm not for sure what a Black Cherokee is. But if you're talking about Cherokees that mixed with African slaves or Hebrew slaves in the Americas, and if you're saying like there's a connection for there, like no, like most of us will have E. Most Cherokees will either have T or Q. So like there's not really a genetic link that way. But could some Cherokee have Middle Eastern ancestors? I mean, sure. I mean, sure. If you're looking at their T and X markers, but really, really technically, from my world, from a young Earth worldview, everyone comes from the Middle East because of the Ark. But that doesn't mean everyone is an Israelite because they come from the Middle East. Arabs are in the Middle East, but they're not Israelites. The Syrians are in the Middle East, but they're not Israelites. So you can have ancestry from the region, but it doesn't mean you're automatically an Israelite. At that point, you have to look at it, culture and other things.
All right. I guess this is a statement from TV. The ET, he said the Edomites were farmers too, also Black, also Hebrew.
All right, so you look like you might be from the Middle East, but Elamites were farmers. Yes, they were kind of farmers. They were people in the highlands of Iran that eventually came down and formed the Elamite civilization. It's believed that Elamites, their descendants may be the Dravidians of India. Black skin, yeah. According to the murals on the walls of Elam, they definitely have black skin and curly hair, but this is because the Elamites are likely the ancestors of the Dravidian peoples. If you look up Elamo-Dravidian, there's a very strong link between the Dravidian language and the Elamite language. And so that's who I believe Elamites are. They're really the ancestors of Dravidians. They're Proto-Dravidians, basically. I can do a whole presentation on that as well, if you want.
All right. Let's see. Looks like we have statements here. No questions. I think I did see one from Lance Single. Right here.
Noah comes from a people of different blood, and his blood is type A. Type A. So one. Well, I wonder how I want to answer this. So Noah comes from a people of different blood. So can you explain that part? And also, what is his blood type? A, I guess that's the question. All right, so I guess by blood type you mean haplogroup. Personally, for me, I don't think Noah, Shem, or Ham really had haplogroups. I believe that their children had haplogroups. I have two different views, by the way. I'm just giving you one of my views. One of my views is that Noah and Shem and Ham really didn't have haplogroups, but rather it was their sons that had it. That's just one view. But I don't think Noah had haplogroup A. I believe A would belong to one of the sons of Ham through one way of looking at things. There's different ways you can look at it. You can also look at it as Noah having no haplogroup, but AB being from Ham or CT being from Japheth that way, or CT being Noah and AB being Ham. Or there's so many different ways you can look at it, but I don't want to like go through a tangent. But he
Yeah,
is definitely Semitic. That's all I gotta say.
I think he's talking about blood type, like O positive, O negative, stuff like that. A positive, A negative.
Oh, well,
Yeah,
I couldn't tell you if he had what blood type because we don't have his bones.
right. All right. Nikki Lane, she's basically following up on what he said. Do you do any research on actual blood typing? If so, which is the origin type? I mean,
I
to be
don't,
honest, you guys can just look this up where all blood types come from.
true. That would be the best way to go about things.
Ezekiel Ben, because I do know there's a doctrine in Israelite circles about blood types, but I don't get into that, and I don't think Ivri gets into those type of doctrines.
Yeah, I can
Um,
kind of just, no offense, but I can kind of care less about blood types unless we're dealing with the monkey rhesus factor. I do want to understand what that's all about, but other than that, I don't go into the other blood types. Only the monkey rhesus factor seems interesting. Like
yeah.
why does it kill the fetus? That's weird.
Hmm. Ezekiel Ben Yisrael says, "Is the lost little stone fake and the accounts of Native Indians speaking Hebrew false? I never believed they were us, but there are artifacts."
The most I could say, all right, so when it comes to Native Americans as a whole, they have Y-DNA-Q, and then they have some C, which comes from Australoid peoples, Polynesian peoples. But for the most part, Native Americans are Q. And genetically speaking, Native Americans descend from Siberian peoples in, well, Siberia. And because of that, I would say that Native Americans majority wise would be Japheth because Q is related to haplogroup R. R is seen predominantly in West Eurasians and Central Asians. So, from my point of view, Native Americans would be Japheth, and it's hard for me to see them being Israelites, if you know what I'm saying. Because if we say Q is Israelites, then we're saying R is Israelites, and we're saying Europeans are Israelites. And that just wouldn't make sense, considering that R was the major founding haplogroup of Proto-Indo-Europeans who spread the Yamnaya culture to Western Europe, as well as carrying R and conquered the bell pecker culture and people who had haplogroup R.
Yep.
Or the cord wire, should I say? Maybe it was the cord wire culture.
No, you had the bell beaker people would have been the Naya. So you were right on that.
Okay.
They even helped build the Stonehenge monument that everyone refers to in Europe. Um. Any more questions? Does anybody else have a question?
I can also open up a clubhouse for about 30 or 20 minutes. I need to eat tonight. And I can answer questions even there, or we can just chat about other things.
Yeah, I'm trying to figure out Yeah, what Nikki Lane's saying here said, read Herodotus. He spilled the beans. All the Middle East was founded by melanated, aka blacks.
Yeah, I had actually went last week into my presentation about Greeks saying that there was various dark-skinned people, aka Ethiopia-looking people in the Middle East, and I even showed a few examples of like people in Yemen who are very dark-skinned who could be easily confused for Ethiopian. The various Bedouin peoples in Arabia are quite dark-skinned. Now, would I say that they're black Negroid people and stuff of all that nature? I'm not getting into morphology. I'll just say that there are various dark-skinned peoples throughout the Middle East.
Okay. Z Mesgar says, so Israel, not Asia. I'm trying to figure out what he's actually saying here.
Israel technically is on the African tectonic plate, but the Levant region is on the African Syrio tectonic plate.
All right. C. Mesgar as well says northern natives and southern natives are not the same people, though they come from the same continent, Asia.
Is he talking about Israel or Native Americans?
I think he's talking about Native Americans.
Northern Native Americans, Southern Americans are not the same people. I mean, there are mostly C in South America, but there's still a lot of Q also in South America. It could have been some admixture. So I wouldn't say completely that all Northern Americans and South Americans are completely different, because you definitely had some Q go into South America. So yeah.
Yeah. Nikki Lane with another statement. She said Ethiopia was all of Africa and Levant.
Sure, I guess.
All right, questions. Get your questions in, everybody. Get your questions in. Let me see if I scroll through and see if I missed any questions.
Actually, I'll answer that question seriously. Ethiopia would not include the Levant, because Ethiopia was only a specific geographical region given by the Greeks for peoples, or for the region south of Egypt. Most times, Greeks didn't really call Egypt Ethiopia.
Okay. I'm looking through and seeing if I can find anything else. If not, I guess we'll just, terminate the live. But the brother is setting up a clubhouse. So if you guys have clubhouse, you can actually find this brother, the Hebrew of Israel, on Clubhouse to have a good dialogue with this brother. Ancients, where are we going? I think I read that. Our Canaanites, we read that. Let's see, someone just she said great temperament.
Thanks.
Zemas Gore says, watched a video of South American female DNA and had 100% American, no Asian. Yeah, but when you look at their haplogroups, all their haplogroups go back to Asia. What else? Or Mongolian, he says, I too have 48% Native American and I have no East Asian.
Well, I said specifically Siberian, and Siberians aren't really East Asian in the sense of being like Chinese. Like I'm not saying that Native Americans descend from like Chinese people because Chinese people have Y-DNA O, but Native Americans have Y-DNA Q. So Native Americans descend from Siberians who also have Y-DNA Q, and they're not really East Asian in the sense of being East Asia of China and Korea and places like that. So yeah, they're probably not going to come out as East Asian in that sense. But I bet you can see. I bet if you were to test their raw DNA data, it's going to be Siberian.
All right. He said, "Well, anywhere. They're not from anywhere in that area." That's what he's saying.
Even Siberia.
They found that the what they call it, the Malta boy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hmm. Well, we can probably discuss that another time. Z Mesriger.
He also made another statement. I showed 2% Israel. My father's dad was a Sephardic Jew.
Well, that would make sense. Yeah.
I'm curious, Masgar, can you put your haplogroup in the chat? Ezekiel Ben Yisrael says, which major Jewish groups of today are mainly true Israel? For example, Mizrahi, Samaritan, Afghan Jews, etc.
Major Jewish problems. True Israel. I'm going to avoid that question until I actually get to the Israel presentation.
All right, so just stay tuned, and the brother will address that in a later presentation. This brother says they have scoop. I mean, Nikki Lane says they have scoop shovel teeth, and that goes back to Eurasia.
Yeah, they have.
That will call me off guard.
Oh yeah.
Any more questions?
I assume she's talking about the Native Americans, right?
Yeah, I think she's talking about them. Yeah. Any more questions from the chat? If not, we've been on 3 hours and going on 3 hours and 40 minutes. We're going to get ready to close the channel, to close the live, but we'll be back tomorrow night around the same time to do the second half of his presentation. So you guys should stay tuned for that. You will not be disappointed. Okay, Ezekiel, you don't want me to stop? Okay, we'll give the question and we'll answer it, but we're going to have to end soon. Ezekiel Ben Israel says, "How do we link to the bones at Lachish?"
Ooh, that's a really good topic, and sorry to say this, but you have to wait until I get to my presentations on Israel. That the Lachish bones are very important, and they're very good evidence for us being Israel. That's all I gotta say.
All right. Z Mesgar also says, "Why no one ever talks about the Holocaust of the Sephardim in Germany?"
Honestly, I don't know. You would probably have to Google that or ask or look into books that deal with that particular subject. I didn't know people choose Sephardim over the Ashkenazi or the Ashkenazi over the Sephardim. I kind of thought everyone sort of speaks of the Holocaust in general terms of the Jewish people being, exterminated. I didn't know they chose one group over the other.
Yeah, it's interesting. He said that there's a brother named Nasi, and he was actually a black Sephardic Jew that actually got caught up in the Holocaust. You can read about him in the book called Soul of Judaism. They bring him up. He was in Germany as a painter, and he got caught up. Yeah, he actually got caught up in the Holocaust. I could actually email that to you, Avery.
Yeah, that's interesting. Wow. You know he had it bad. He's black and Jewish.
Yeah, 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 man. He was getting it doubly, on both sides. Mesgar says funny. All these Spanish Jews left Spain and many left to Germany, but all who profited were Ashkenaz.
Yeah, it's definitely sort of interesting. There is more of a focus on Ashkenaz than Sephardi or Yemeni or Ethiopian or whatever. But it's politics. That's all I gotta say. It's politics. Why that's the case, and race to a certain extent. Race and politics.
Nikki Lane says, "What about Amaru people's connections to Hebrews?"
Can you give me a brief breakdown of Amaru people?
Yeah, I wonder. I don't know. I don't even know that either. I'm trying to figure out what she's talking about.
Me too, because I'm thinking. Amaru. I don't know. I don't want to make any assumptions. So I'm just. Can you give me a brief breakdown of who that is, Nikki?
Yeah, that an Egyptian people. Okay, while she does that, I guess he's just giving more statements. He says all Ashkenazi prophet and not one Hispanic Jews are known of. Um, he also says thanks for the answers.
No, no problem, man. Or girl, whatever.
Okay, Ezekiel ben Yisrael says, where would you say the highest concentration of Esau is today?
Petra and Greece and Italy.
All right. Sister, if you can clarify what you meant by the Amaru. Is that an
I want to
Egyptian
use Amorites, but I don't want to make that assumption. She's talking about the Amorites.
Oh, maybe that would make sense. I wonder. You might be right.
That's one way for her to clarify, because if she's talking about the Amorites, I could kind of go into that, but I don't know what she's talking about.
Yeah, because they would be called the Amaru. Nikki Lane says the Niga or Ninga people of Bantu origin, like the closely related to the Kikuyu, Imbu, and Mberi. They are concentrated in the vicinity of Mount Kenya. The place that the Amaru ancestors migrated from after is Unk. Unk.
All right. So I'm not familiar with the Naga people. Kind of reminds me of going off subject though. It kind of reminds me of Lord Voldemort, Snake Naga. But anyways, I'm not familiar with the Naga people. I have to actually study them. So you say the Naga people are Bantu origin, like the closely related Kikuyu. The place of their ancestors. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know about any of that. I know about the Kikuyu, but I don't know about the Naga. I have to study that group, to be honest, if I want to give you a truthful answer.
She said she's talking about the Amorites, the Amaru.
All right, so, but didn't you say the place of the Emerald ancestors migrated from after is. So the place of the Amorites ancestors migrated from after is. All right, this is kind of all right. Can you reword your question though, but this time put it in Amorites, so I can really make sure I know what you're saying, because it is a bit it's worded a bit strangely. I'm not gonna lie.
Okay. Z Masgar says someone said all white people are Esau. All. So just those you mentioned.
Yeah, whoever says all white people are, and I'll have to ask Japheth. I think people who say all white people are Esau is wrong. Now, good theologically or even genetically speaking. Uh, I would say white people as a whole descend from Japheth. Some white people are Esau, but that's only due to Semites mixing with descendants of Japheth. And I would say some of those white people are that are Esau are some Greeks and some Italians. Not all Greeks, not all Italians, only some, particularly those with E markers.
All right. Ezekiel Ben Yisrael says Latinos are black Hispanics. Why are other people claiming it today? And thanks to both of you for your time.
Oh, no problem, Ezekiel. I'm not going to really get into the question of Latinos or being black Hispanics. I think Latino is a language, so and anyone can kind of speak a language group. But there are definitely black Hispanics in this world. Yes. Um, Now, people claiming to be well, all right. So breaking down Hispanic, Hispanic to me is more of a cultural thing. You can have white Hispanics, black Hispanics, brown Hispanics. Um, I don't know what you mean by why are people claiming it today. I just think people who speak the Spanish language are and who are culturally Hispanic, or they're that. They're.
All right. Any more questions? Any more questions? I'm gonna give you a minute or so, and then we're closing this out. Yeah, that Zeemans Gar said yes, it is a language, but also those who are called that they are in Turkey. Turkey, what is that? That's supposed to be land.
Okay.
Israel. Ladino is Spanish Hebrew.
Yep, Ladino is Spanish Hebrew. Yep. That is very much true. It's a mixture of Spanish and Hebrew. But
All
if you
right.
want to know the purest form of Hebrew, that would be Yemeni and Ethiopian Hebrew. If you want to know the purest form, though.
So, any more questions? Any more questions? If not, we're going to close out, and you guys can have a dialogue with the brother via Clubhouse. Just look up the Hebrew of Israel on Clubhouse, and you'll be able to get in contact and chat it up with this brother.
Yep,
Give you
I'll
guys.
start it right now, and I'm going to open it up. Let people join in. Already have people joining who are part of the club. That's why when y'all get on Clubhouse, join the club, and you'll know when I'm making lives. Let me see. Got visitors.
All right. Going once. Going twice. Going thrice. All right, we got one. You brothers don't want the video to end, I see.
Nope. That's fine.
Would haplogroup AA be pre-Adamites?
Personally, I don't believe in the pre-Adamite view, so I'll have to say no. Personally, for me, that's just me. Yeshua can take that if he wants.
No, I'm with you. I agree with you. Nikki Lane says, "What is the Clubhouse a game?"
Oh
No, it's
my
not.
goodness. Clubhouse is such a. I guess it is a new app. I guess it is new. I will say. So Clubhouse is an interactive social media platform where you can speak to people, almost like a phone chat, It's basically like Zoom and StreamYard, but you can't show your face. So you have to like speak like you would on a cell phone conversation with someone. Just look it up on your iPhone or on your Apple store and type in Clubhouse, and you'll see it, and download it. And when you download it, just create a quick little profile and then type in the Hebrew of Israel, and you should be able to find my profile and my club. But like I said, it's just a little interactive social media platform. It's pretty cool.
All right. Any questions? This is going to be the last time I do this. Then we're going to end it. If you got any last question that you want to pose to this brother, you can pose them now. If not, you can get on the Clubhouse app and discuss. You will discuss this with him directly. Ezekiel Ben Yisrael says, are the Yoruba named after King Solomon's son, as Derek Lane says?
Ooh, Derek Lane is a very great source. I'm not going to go into him right now, but I really do like Derek Lane's work. And I'll even mention it in my future presentations.
Yep. We love Derek Lane's work. All right. So any more questions? Nikki Lane says she'll save any questions for tomorrow. Okay, cool.
Thank you, because I do need to get ready to head out.
All right, we'll end it there. We appreciate everybody coming by to view this brother's powerful information and presentation. We will be going live tomorrow night around the same time, so you guys can look forward to that. But with that, we're going to close the show out. So I say shalom. Hit that like button. Subscribe to the channel. That like button is free to press. So just press that like button for us so our algorithm will increase here on YouTube and we're able to grow and expand to a wider audience. Also share our video on the various social media platforms so we can get the word out. And again, we appreciate all of you guys, and we will be back again tomorrow to give you guys a great presentation. So shalom to everybody. Love all you guys. Hit the like button, and we'll see you tomorrow.
Shalom.
Big business.
RSK, let it play, boy.
When I tell them I'm an Israelite, it's big business, nothing miniature. Serving same thing as minister. Kill the flesh, how to finish them. These commandments, they'll sustain you. I'm surrounded by these angels. I ain't worried, I'm protected from seen and unseen dangers. When I tell them I'm an Israelite, it's big business, nothing miniature. Serving same thing as minister. Kill the flesh, how to finish them. These commandments, they'll sustain you. I'm surrounded by these angels. I ain't worried, I'm protected from seen and unseen dangers. I wake up and say me a prayer. Brush my teeth, babe, then I throw on some threads. Wash my face, grab a cup, hold me some yum. Put on my backpack, then I'm off to the bread. I eat these devils for breakfast. Gotta be careful. Whole lot of blood being shed in the streets. World is so wicked, I weep for the living. I drop a free cheer for the dead. All my white friends in my pocket, or either they loading onto this black card that I swipe. Say every time that I drop it, the verses be hitting more harder than problems of life. Rich, I collected 2 pennies from every person that willingly gave me advice. Being afraid can't exist in my spirit. I'm fearing no man but the Father in Christ. I put in work with the brothers. We stood on them corners from 10 to like 9 the same night, teaching our people the gospel, equipped with a camera, some posters, some speakers, and mic. Every time that I see mama, she telling me, son, you gotta walk in the light. Christ, the bread of heaven, keep feeding my spirit, and I want a low, not a slide. When I tell them I'm an Israelite, it's big business, nothing miniature. Serving same thing as minister. Kill the flesh, how to finish them. These commandments, they'll sustain you. I'm surrounded by these angels. I ain't worried, I'm protected from seen and unseen dangers. When I tell them I'm an Israelite, it's big business, nothing miniature. Serving same thing as minister. Kill the flesh, how to finish them. These commandments, they'll sustain you. I'm surrounded by these angels. I ain't worried, I'm protected from seen and unseen dangers.
When I tell you I'm an Israelite, tribe of Judah, don't you take it personal. Plead the blood on these demons, we purging them. Don't entertain Jezebels, we be curving them. Ayy, I got a ribbon, she virtuous. In person, this blue life ain't virtual. I can't forget when I heard the truth. I got cut with that word, it got surgical. Conviction can lead to repentance. I pray these verses encourage you. We repented, now we on the vertical. Judah rising, see Isaiah 32. Big business, nothing minuscule. I picked up that pen back in middle school. Guard your light and take heed who you listen to. Watch your mouth and your ears and your vision too. Hashatan and Shalkani won't finish you. In Mortal Kombat, this war is not physical. Gird your loins up and follow the general. Messiah is coming, that's scriptural. You gotta starve your flesh. The real war ain't even started yet. This look like a setup for a second exodus. I'm trying to be where the water at. Let's get it.
When I tell them I'm an Israelite, it's big business, not miniature. Serving same thing as minister. Kill the flesh, how to finish them. These commandments, they'll sustain you. I'm surrounded by these angels. I ain't worried, I'm protected from seen and unseen dangers. When I tell them I'm an Israelite, it's big business, not miniature. Serving same thing as minister. Kill the flesh, how to finish them. These commandments, they'll sustain you. I'm surrounded by these angels. I ain't worried, I'm protected from seen and unseen dangers.
All right, everybody. Shalom, and we'll see you guys tomorrow.